call the meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. I make the following statement, that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. The panel today, on my left is Mr. Robert Upton, my far left is Marla Billinghurst. I'm Robert Buss, the chair. The assessor today is Matthew Barogas, and the recording secretary is Katie Sutherland. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record.
Yeah.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. You affirm, right?
Yes.
So please state your name.
Rocky G. Phil.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, we will begin with item number 1 on the docket, 190 Smith Street. Mr. Baracus, whenever you're ready.
File number 19-2267, roll number 1209328 3000 Smith Street. Assessed for the 2020 roll year of the April 1st, 2018 reference date, $41,702,000. We have some commercial in the Resam, and we have 306 suites. Of the 306 suites, 108 are bachelor, 181 are one bedroom, and 17 are two bedroom. It was built in 1970. We have an effective year built of 1990 on it. It was previously a hotel, and it has had work done to it to convert it to an apartment. If you go on my page 22, shows 10-year history of permits on the property totaling just shy of 19 million. Work done to the property. Exterior alterations, mechanical. They redid the interiors. You'll see the pictures later on, to fit it up to being an apartment. So, construction class C, masonry, bearing walls. If you go to page 2, you see they've handed in their income and expense information. On page 3, you'll see the model breakdown on this property. So we've got 3 streams. We've got apartment, which is the bulk of the assessed value using model parameters. And then we've got, there's 4 units total. What we have on record is we have a restaurant and 3 retail units. At the time, pardon me, yeah, restaurant, 3 retail units. At the time of printing of this report, there was a tenant in the restaurant, and then there was a tenant in one of the retail units. The other units were unfinished, waiting for tenants. So that's why there's an unfinished adjustment when you see in the combined income summary denoted in red. That's taken by, that was calculated by taking the unfinished area and applying square footage value, cost to finish up. So that was deducted off the total value. However, when I was poking around with this report on the computer, I found that one of the retail units has been filled. If you go to page 35, one of the ones that was previously vacant was filled. So we have fast signs in there right now. So that wasn't included in our calculation. So with that unfinished fixturing allowance, that would be too high. But we haven't had a chance to go out there and inspect it and formally put on, but we are looking at current condition. So that needs to be noted. So carrying on, we have our, on page 4, we've got our market income on the property. So for retail, we have rates ranging from just under $13 up to $14. The smaller 2 units, the 1815 premise area and the 1450 premise area, those are the ones that we have donated as vacant. And so they're the ones who got the unfinished fixturing allowance applied to them. Average rent per suite we have for the multifamily side is $1,087.45. The restaurant we have $19.22 on the restaurant side. Our rent comparables are on page 5. They're properties in the area. Or it looks like the average monthly rent assigned by the model is below what the comparables are showing. It is important to note that, however, the subject property does have a high percentage of bachelor units, which the average rent should be lower than the other ones that don't. Page 6, you'll see our commercial rents. They range from $13 to $17 in the surrounding area. There is very last page of my brief, page 41 and 42, this is from 2017. This is an advertisement that we have scanned into our system. If you look at the back, the very back page, it's for one of the retail units they're trying to lease up. It says net rent on the second column, the bolded second line from the bottom says $20 per square foot net. So it looks like they're asking for more than what we're assigning them in our model. Got our typical cap rate information on page 8 and 8A. Again, on 8A, these are just a sample of sales that took place during the reference period. Just to illustrate the accuracy of the model, they're not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property at all. Going through on page 10, this is just our preamble about the non-recoverables. We use 2% for the non-recoverables, and we don't have the management fee this time as per review of properties found on page 12. So we've got 2% non-recoverable and shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expenses associated with vacant space. Page 14 shows the income and expense mailer. They submitted it to us, and they wrote 6 months at the top. So given that it was 6 months, I was able to multiply by 2, and looking at the numbers, it looks like our model is in line with what they're submitting to us, supported by comps. 48% expense ratio seems pretty good for a building that's just been fixed up. So we've got on page 23, there's just some pictures and some ads from the internet showing information in regards to building. Fully renovated right downtown, new appliances, central heat, air conditioning, granite countertops throughout, storage lockers at $30 a month, on-site fitness facility, membership included. So it's got a lot to it. Page 26 onward shows pictures. They're a little hazy, they're from my brief of this one last go around, but you can get the drift by looking at them. Those pictures go to page, let's see here, page 36. Shows the outside of fast signs. So I Googled this property and I was looking it up on page 37. Now, we have a couple indications that there perhaps was a sale on this property, but we didn't have anything recorded going through land titles, so I'm not sure where this information is coming from. Might it be a share sale? I don't have that information. So on page 37 from Commercial Real Estate Services Incorporated, shows that they're putting out that 190 Smith sold in June of 2017 for $56,550,000. 306 units for $184,804 a unit, with a cap rate of 4.94, saying it was a private sale. If you go to page 38 and 39, shows, I did some more digging. It shows the website where I got this information from. Another source of information showing that there was a sale on this property. It is from the Coldwell Banker Commercial Blue Book. And so that's the cover page on 39 is a closer look at the cover page. On page 40, highlighted for Winnipeg Manitoba here, they're saying several large sales in commercial market, 190 Smith, sold for $56,550 with a cap rate of 4.8. Again, we don't have anything going through land title, so it might have been a share sale. I don't have information in regards to this. So, to sum it up, considering we don't have one of the units occupied, we're looking at current condition, it should be in regards to the fast signs unit, the rental comps and the income and expense mailer submitted to the city, and it looks like it transacted on the market in 2017 for greater than what we're assessing it for by a good amount. I didn't see fit to make a change on this property. That's my evidence, thank you.
Thank you. You have questions? Mr. Neufeld, if you have questions?
Sure, we'll start at the end and go backwards. You talked about a broker's report, pages 37 and 40. Now, on that broker's report, you note the third sale, 1100 Waverly.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, that's not the question. Did you note that it's there?
Yeah, it's on the sheet.
And what does that report say the cap was in that case?
It says 5.7.
Page 8A of your report, what does the city say it is? Page 8, bottom row.
We have 4.97.
So is your evidence undermining the cap rate model?
Again, I don't have any details.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna put reliance on this report, then you're discrediting your own cap rate report. So which one counts? Which report are you putting reliance on for this panel today?
Well, in regards to how the 5.7 was determined for capital or real estate, I can't comment on that, so I would put reliance on the city's report.
Okay, so when you introduce reports produced by other people, you have no idea what went into making them up, do you?
And I said that during
No,
my presentation.
I just make it very clear that if you're gonna bring this in, you have to weigh it against your own report and your own credibility. So you already, not you, the assessor already disagrees with this report, do they not?
Yeah, we have two different cap rates for that one property.
And do you know anything about this supposed sale, any of the details?
Of 190 Smith?
Yes.
No.
So you have no knowledge of financial arrangements, no knowledge of anything behind this reported, which you're reporting? You have no concessions, costs, nothing like that?
Yeah, I wasn't part of the transaction, I
Okay.
don't know.
Now, when did the renovation begin on this apartment?
Well, I believe on page, got a history of permits,
The big one, yes, page 22.
22, yeah. Work going back, starting, I got back to 2007.
2008, though, was the large expense, correct?
Yes.
And when was it finished? Well, you have a statement that only has half a year, and there's a reason for it, correct? They hadn't finished. So it's fair to say that this project was a long-term project?
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah, and were you aware of the difficulties in the middle of the project issues relating to whether they could even continue the job or not, you know?
No, I'm not.
Okay. The previous assessment being a total of approximately 34.8 million has now been increased to 41.7 million. Do you have market evidence to support an increase in value in the period in between?
Oh, just the market in general?
Yeah.
I don't have any market reports.
Okay. And you did refer to the statement. Now, in the statement that was provided, sorry, now this begins, let's make sure, pages 14 to pages 21. Were these statements that were provided by the owner?
Yes.
Have they been altered in any way?
By us?
To your knowledge, have they been altered in any way?
No.
Now, I was just looking for a particular line item, just one sec. Did you look at the bottom of page 15 and the tax bill?
Bottom of page 15. Okay, yeah.
Now, did you check whether or not that this was on the actual operation at the time, or that this was an older bill?
I didn't check.
So you were aware that a supplemental was issued for 2017?
Yes.
And the resulting assessment was about $31 million. Off the top of your head, would you disagree with me if I told you an assessment of $31 million is approximately $350,000 in taxes?
Oh, man. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, no, it's close. It could be 340, 360, but it's approximately 1.2%, generally, the effective
Okay.
tax rate. So those actual taxes are higher than they've actually reported in the statement, and you see that, you think that that's probably because they hadn't received their tax bill yet?
Oh, yeah, I got what you're saying, I could.
Yeah. So the statement would require some adjustment for reliance.
Yeah, a purchaser wouldn't expect the lower taxes.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Now, did you attempt to determine what their repair and maintenance costs were on this property? I'm looking on page 14 at $120,000.
That's what they reported, yes.
So 120,000 at 306 units is $392 a unit. You think that's a bit on the low side?
It's definitely low.
Okay, thanks, those are my questions.
Thank you. See if the panel has questions. Ms. Billinghurst?
No, I don't have a question.
Mr. Upton?
None of this time, no.
So
council, at the time, it was pointed out that it was long construction period, but for our purposes, the suites and everything are finished,
Yep.
complete and in use, essentially.
Yep.
That's all my questions. Mr. Neufeld, if you'd like to
Thank you.
give us through your information.
This evaluation, I'm sorry, they attempted to consult me prior to making this up, and I didn't have time to even look at it.
Who's they?
My people,
Okay,
my people.
the owners.
No, my people who work for me,
Oh, okay.
who prepare these valuations. And what we obviously had a problem with is, you heard me discuss, property taxes hadn't been amended yet, and our repair and maintenance costs hadn't been, were low. So when you look at the statement, we in fact got an annualized NOI of 2,117. But that annualized NOI on the, and this would be on the, I'm looking at page 2, the left-hand column, the bottom. So that NOI would be based on 6 months and based without the adjustment. So we knew that the taxes were off a bit, and the expenses, R&M, were off a great deal. We would probably have adjusted this had we had time and tried to annualize it out. And it would have come in at about 1.8 million. For the purpose of this report, we ran out of time, and we looked at the assessor's number, and we said, well, we're going to put that number in for now, because it's all we have, and we didn't have, the adjustment required in this is about a half-day job to figure this out and apply it properly. So for the purposes of our panel today, that is what we're going to be putting forward. But it is not the right NOI. The right NOI is a bit lower than this. On the commercial side, the rents were far clear in that the achieved rents were a little under $15 a foot. It really doesn't matter what the ads say, how much you ask for it, you're getting 15. So after working through our calculations on that, and what we ended up using was the actual vacancy of 8.1 on the commercial side, and no, I'm sorry, it was market, my apologies. We used, from the Johnson report, we used the downtown business area, retail, downtown office, miscellaneous office, and came up with 8.1%. And that was applied, the vacancy is greater than that. For non-recoverables, we used a 5% calculation. This is on the office portion. And the statements very much support that. The actual non-recoverables were quite difficult to decipher given the partial statement on the commercial side, because the building doesn't maintain two sets of income streams. So there is some separation indicated in the statements. You can see they talk about the rents. They'll have the commercial side, and then they'll have the residential side. But the point is, if you have, for example, a fire contract or a snow removal contract, they don't split them up on that basis. It's an expense, an elevator expense, it's on the whole thing. So we didn't have that breakdown. So we applied a rate of 5%. And then the shortfall that we've applied was based on an estimate. We knew the taxes were $290 a foot, $235 for utilities, which was based on the city's business tax model, which is generally in the ballpark. And repair and maintenance, we did not have any clear numbers at all. The dollar was put in, it's actually much higher than $1, it's probably $3, but I'm not making changes on that today to confuse matters more. So we ended up having a NOI in the whole project of 2,117,424. And our capitalization rate was estimated, it's a little bit it's a little bit confusing, but it was applied at 6.73% overall. And the breakdown and the calculation of that was done at the bottom of page 2. Now, we don't do separate income streams. We don't believe in that. It is what it is, but it's nice for illustration purposes. If an investor looks at it, you'd see an apartment side, less of a risk, commercial side, higher risk. And one of the things in the investment markets is that you don't get overly optimistic and say, well, we got a lot of apartments, it should really go lower. We look at the worst, always look at the worst case scenario. What's the worst part of this performance? And we have a retail which is being very difficult to lease. So that's necessitated it higher. The only comments I would make on this is that having reviewed these numbers, myself personally, I would think a lower cap rate on the overall project is appropriate. However, we've overstated our income by at least $300,000. So in effect, what we're doing here, so I'm not gonna change any numbers, but I just wanna explain what I did. A $300,000 understatement is 14%, so taking 6.73 times 0.86, our effective cap rate, it really works out to 5.79%, and which would indicate about 5.6% on the residential and about 8% on the commercial. So again, an understatement of expenses, understatement of income, no. I was up all night here. I had a really bad trip to Dauphin yesterday. We overstated the income by $300,000, and it should be a lower income, and then we should have capped it lower too. When I do the adjustments in front of you now, our overall cap rate is not 673, it's 579. So I'm not changing the numbers. So the values we're looking for are as stated in the report, in the middle of the second page, left column, class 20, 29,496, class 60, 1,772. Now, subject to this adjustment of 201,000, and we're really fine with the assessor if they want that adjustment is finished. It was for unfinished space, and we're open to interpreting however that is going to end up treated. For right now, it's on the roll, so you know, if they want to take it off, that's fine. But those are the two numbers that we're working with, 29496 and 1772. Now, the site is under appeal at the municipal board for both of these previous supplementals, and of course it has to do with the absorption and how quick the absorption is happening. And the two issues I pointed out on statements is that you have to stabilize with the actual taxes and the actual repair and maintenance. Overall, we're being quite reasonable. We do have a sub 6% rate in there, and there are some caps in the back and up here of various properties. The ones I was looking at for this site, we did have page 40, 228 Notre Dame. Now that's a 1944 building that had been renovated, built to design as office, and it sold the cap of 5.53. It has a very small retail component in it, which would have pushed that cap downwards, reflecting more of the residential portion. And there were a number of other sales here. One that we, oh yes, they did put it in, page 41. That picture is wrong. The building at 500 Portage, which was a high-rise residential and a fair amount of office space and a parkade, our company sold that November 2015. And the actual cap, I have it 6%, it's actually slightly below that, and I don't have a precise number, it's something like 5.91 or 5.89. So I'll just be honest and clear about this, is that I put it in 6% without the points, because I hadn't got the precise number yet, but we reported it as a bit under 6%. That's the one at Colony, near Colony and Portage, Colony Square, that's it. Very, very comparable to the subject, so our caps are fine, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll have entertain questions from the assessor.
Okay. Would you agree that the vacancy rate is, as per this statement, market at 2.6%? What do you take away for discounts first?
No, well, see, discounts is part of the vacancy. With apartments, what you do, especially after you've been involved in a renovation scheme, is you register your rents at residential tenancies branch. And so there is a registered rent on all of the units. What you get for the apartments, less the discount, is the income. So on the books, they keep the gross amount. So it exists on that basis. After taking that into consideration, then let me just try and think what that would be. So what you would do is you would start with your rent 2,131 and subtract the 164. So your income is 1967.52. 2.6%, yeah, okay. I didn't want to object to it until I actually did the
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds good.
So would you agree that there's good demand for this property?
I'm too much of a pessimist to answer that question for downtown apartments. I see the one going up across the street, the former Manitoba Housing Project, and I'm wondering who is in their right mind is gonna rent there. You know, you see that picture in your report, the lady with the dog? I had to chase her off my parking lot because she didn't clean up after the dog. So I'm already jaundiced by that. No, I'm not sure about the downtown apartment scene. Everybody wants it to grow. I'm not sure it's showing the strength that people had hoped. Like, there's the new project on Assiniboine, which is woefully empty.
Do you know if this property did transact in 2017?
No, it was an internal transaction. There was debt, recovery debt that had to be picked up. The number and money owing and mortgage takeover. There was a change in control, not a sale. If you look at the participants in it, well, I guess if you'd known who the participants were, it was all over the investment news about 2 years ago.
Let's see. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Upton, any questions?
Yeah, I just want to be clear on what you're asking for here in terms of the final value.
Me too.
And on page 2 at the bottom right-hand corner, where you've used blended cap rate,
I see that.
now, the value of residential, what are you asking for there? You're asking for 29,946, you said before?
Yeah, I'm mystified myself here. I see that in both cases, the NOI is the same, the combined is the same, but the calculation workup is slightly different. And I can't explain it.
Well, the numbers you quoted were 29,496.
Okay, no, I know, I see what the difference is now. I was quoting from the left column in the middle, where both revenue streams were capped at 6.73%. Bottom right, a separate cap was applied, and therefore the numbers came out differently. A minor change for the apartments, because it's such a big amount to begin with, and a large change for the commercial.
So are you asking them for residential 29,496, you said?
Yeah, I had 29,496, and I have to think this through. So I have to go back to our standards, and an appraisal is, we don't have two separate buildings, we have one building, we have one revenue stream, we have one ultimate cap. So by our standards, we would be bound to the numbers of 29,496 and 1772. By the assessment department standards, we would argue class 20 at 30,071,000 and commercial at 1,397,000.
What's the second number?
1,397,000.
Yeah.
These numbers.
Yeah, so it's,
So,
sorry.
what are you asking for then, Rocky? The final number, what do you want?
Well, then the 31.
And which cap rate?
31,268 on a
Okay,
blended cap rate?
I'm going to invoke jurisdictional exception, which means I don't have to talk like an appraiser. Now I'm just gonna be nobody. Page 2, bottom right corner, that's what I'm asking for. 30,071,000 apartments, 1,397,000 for commercial, and there's no allocation in there for that $201,000 adjustment.
That has to come off there.
Well, you can take it off. I think they're gonna claw it back anyway, so if you put it in there and say we included it, maybe they're not gonna bother with fighting with supplementals. We'll save everybody a lot of paperwork.
So then you're asking for a cap rate of 673 then?
673, yeah.
Okay, because you said 5.7,
Well,
5.79.
well, because the actual statements would, like, if we're at $400 a unit now, it's $120,000 in RM. It should be $1,200 a unit. That would be the adjustments. That's $240,000 more off the expenses. The tax amount on books, they've got it at 200 and something plus another 15 on commercial, so they're about 120,000 short there. So it's $360,000 short on the expense side of the claim. So the NOI isn't 2117, it's actually 1,757,000. And if you use that number instead, the cap rate's much, much lower. It's, sorry, 5.58, now that I have a calculator. We actually want a blended cap of 558 on the actual income. So there's too many mistakes in this thing, and we're kind of burning both ends of the candle right now, and we're not giving you all nice, clean reports to deal with. It's all we can do right now. But we're using
Okay, well, that's fine.
actuals 558, which is 5.5 in the building and probably around 8 on the commercial side. That's the way it would work out. So the numbers, bottom right-hand corner is what we're looking for.
Okay, thanks, George.
Ms. Billyhurst? Questions?
You covered it.
I'm covered on
Yeah, I was extremely confused about this, but.
Yep.
Okay, and, well, I have one question. Is this, do they sort of, for the apartments, is it monthly rentals or?
Yeah, they've gone to a standard apartment style. They used to be
A hotel type thing?
business or short-term furnished rentals.
But now they're doing month-to-month type thing? and going
No,
to
it's
rent?
just normal apartments.
Oh,
Yeah, like where they were before, I don't even imagine they were covered by residential tenancies branch as a short-term stay. I don't know for sure.
okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
It was called Place Real.
Right, yeah.
Thank you. That will conclude 190 Smith Street.
It doesn't get less confusing.
And we will move on to item number two, 230 Princess Street. Mr. Baracus, whenever you're ready.
Okay. File number 19-435. Roll number 13096146100. 230 Princess Street. It's another Res M. Location, Princess Pacific. Assessed value $6,542,000 with $869,000 being allocated to commercial. So Res M, 4-story, originally built in 1907, and effective year built is 1990. So it's been renovated. 49 suites, 33 outdoor parking stalls, construction class D wood or steel frame walls. Of the 49 suites, 9 are bachelor, 30 are 1 bedroom, and 10 are 2 bedroom. So if you go to page 2, you'll see that they've been good handing their mailers in. Page 3 shows our model breakdown on the property. So it's all model parameters, and just did a combined income summary. Little overlooked on the side there, so the 9.5 cap on retail and 5 cap on the apartment. We've got a blended cap of 5.6 to come up with our rounded value of $6,542,000. So page 3, or rather page 4, just shows that the rents that are assigned to the property, to the different sections, income streams. So for the retail stream, for the 7,430 square feet, we've got $12.48 on the rent. We've got our rent comparables, pardon me, on page 5. So effective year built, we picked newer properties. This property has been renovated and fixed up on the inside. The pictures are at the end of my brief, starting at page 16, to confirm that. So the average monthly rent of $938 is below the comparables around it. Now, some of these comparables are in the South Portage area, 128 Smith, 160 Smith, 120 Donald. But it's in the general downtown area. Page 6 shows our comparable leases ranging from 1111 to 54 Arthur Street, which is 1855, so it looks like it's a wide range, but we're within it. Assigning the rent at $12.48. Our cap rate chart 6A7. Our income and expense mailer submitted to us is found on page 13. So, on page 13, you'll note that you'll see line 107. It says other residential specify. There's parking. It says on separate lot. There's actually 2 lots on this pit and on the title. So there's one lot on the northwest corner. That's where the apartment proper sits with the suites. And then on the southwest corner of Princess and Pacific, there is approximately 9,500 square foot gravel parking lot where there is parking for the tenants of this property. So that lot does not have a separate assessment to it. There are 2 lots on the title.
Did you have a picture of that?
A picture of it? I have some pictures right here. There's also,
With the lot on it.
oh, for page, on your page 3, just across the street, across Pacific, that's part of it.
You missed Newfield's brief?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I also have some pictures here.
Okay, so I just want to be clear about this, because when I first looked at this, they were separate, they've been merged, I take it at some point.
Yeah, well, they're together, they're on the same PID.
So it's the same, you're assessing the block and the lot?
Yeah, both,
Okay.
that lot and the block, it's all 230 Princess.
Okay, so you got parking for that,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's included in our.
got it.
So that's, just to clear up any sort of confusion that might arise from that, that is a part of the income that the property
Okay.
gets. So looking at, just going over the mailer on page 13, a couple things stood out to me, mainly that the management was pretty high and that the R&M was quite high. So if you go to 15A, I did a review of the property, and you'll see that the management was 11.88% of the residential effective gross income, and the repair and maintenance was quite high. So we management is usually 5%. So applying that to the residential effective gross income, and then, given that it is an older building and it has been fixed up, however, there is still issues to be arising with it due to its chronological age. I ran a 2,000 per unit R&M scenario just to see what sort of value would come up. So calculated that net operating income using our blended cap, generated a total calculated value of $6,725,705 using that scenario, just to try and, take the temperature of what it would be at 2,000 unit, because almost 28 per unit R&M. We don't typically see that on an ongoing basis without there being some sort of capital expenditure going on to this place. So, given that with a normalized market management and repair and maintenance per unit, we were right around what the model value is coming out to. I didn't make a change on this property. The pictures, you can see 16 onward, There are high ceilings. And there's been refitted to be an apartment. So I did make a change on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions of the assessor?
Yes, just starting with, you're gonna hear this question a lot from me these days. Page 13, 14, 15, these supplied by the owner?
Yes.
Have there been any alterations?
No.
You have, of course, made some adjustments on page 15A, which you've shown, in your opinion, you might personally wanna consider that.
Yes.
And this was built in 1907, correct?
Yeah, that's what we have.
And when was the renovation done, do you know?
What do we have here for notes? Let's see here, if I have anything. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I don't have a note on it, unfortunately. Fairly, I'd say within the past 15 years, maybe?
Okay, so I'll put to you that it was before 2012. Fair?
Do you know the date?
You said 15 years, I'm just narrowing it down.
Okay.
So my question follow-up would be, in the years since that time, would you not have expected that the repairs and maintenance they're presenting to you are fairly stabilized at this point?
I would think that a number more around 2,000 a unit, which is still pretty high. But I tried to weigh the fact that it was fixed up, but it's got older bones, that's.
Yeah, okay.
It is what it is.
Now, did you look at prior period statements for repairs?
No, I did not.
Well, you do have those, you
Oh,
do
do I?
collect them, don't you? No, you haven't presented them, but the city
Oh.
assessor does collect them, do they not?
Yeah.
And
Do I have-
if you're trying to stabilize expenses, I'm just wondering, wouldn't it have been a better idea maybe just to go through them? Looking at the prior period, it's 116,000.
160,000,
No, 116.
116. I guess you have it in yours.
No, no, I'm just going through my files, I have had all their filings here.
Okay.
And so, but you didn't go back over the history of the statements
No.
to see if this wasn't a permanent trend?
No, that's correct.
Have you inspected this?
I have been there before. My friend lives there.
Oh, okay. One of the mid floors or the upper floor?
I believe it was one of the mid floors.
Okay, I mean, I don't wanna know where, because there's some different styles there.
Mhm.
And, so fair to say that they've preserved as many of the original features as possible?
Yeah, I would say the pictures in this report are representative of what the building looks like.
Okay, so why, how then can it be, effective age changed 83 years forward? Yes, because I'm just looking at the pictures here, it's still the original wood slat roof, brick exterior, they've replaced windows and put in demising walls, put in plumbing, put in a sprinkler. The wood beams, posts and beams still run through all the units, so the structure wasn't changed, envelope wasn't changed except for windows. So how does one eliminate the last 83 years? It's still a stone foundation, correct?
Yeah, to my knowledge, they have not replaced the foundation. I don't have any notes in regards to the effective age change. I know the effective age does affect what sort of rents the model
Right.
creates. And I'm looking at the rents that they're collecting, it seems to be in line on page 3 with what the model is putting out based on the effective age adjustment.
You're saying the model is supporting potential rent?
Yes. Which is, and that potential rent is calibrated using,
But the model does not support their reported expenses. Notwithstanding your comments on it, on management, which I agree with you on, but taking those out of the picture, the model is not supporting the expenses, are they?
that would be correct, yes.
Okay. Now, if your model, the retail cap rate at 9.5%, that's pretty much at the high end of the range, is it not? I believe it exceeds your 80th percentile. Why would that be?
I believe they're calibrated by age, area, and size.
This, is this not a 1907 cap rate?
I have to admit, I'm not as versed on the commercial
Okay.
side, being predominantly a multifamily assessor. But it would have been taken from the effective year built.
There's a bit of a discrepancy here, is there not, between the cap rate applied to the retail versus the multifamily side, in that one appears to exceed the range on the high side, and the other is on the extreme low side, on the multifamily range, from your numbers.
There is quite a difference in cap between those two income streams.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll get into that later, because this discrepancy exists on some other properties that we're gonna hear today, so I'm just trying to understand it. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. See if the panel has any questions? Ms. Billinghurst?
No questions.
Mr. Upton?
Would there be maintenance involved in the parking, the separate parking lot that is unusual for a building like snow removal, that type of thing? Maintaining the lot in decent shape? You said 2,000 apartments, but you allowed something in there for that type of expense on the parking lot? You show
I didn't make an additional consideration for that.
He does show a parking and telephone down there or something on the expense statement.
Sorry, which line is it?
On the expense statement, line number. $215. Says parking, telephone, $11,000.
Yeah, it looks like they are displaying expenses specific to parking.
Yeah. So that, your 2,000 suite, would that?
That's not
They
something I
become-
removed. I didn't remove that line when I did my consideration on page 15A. I just
Okay.
adjusted the repair, maintenance and repair. That wasn't taken out of the calculation.
Okay. Yep.
I have no questions. So, Mr. Neufeld?
Mr. Upton took my thunder. That's exactly what the issue is with repairs and maintenance, is that the parking lot is included in that apartment number. So the building was Williams Restaurant Supply for the longest time. I used to shop there, and was renovated and turned into apartments. I inspected it for several times. Done several appraisals on this property. And it was an interesting example. There was a participation of Center Venture in helping with the funding capital. And what they did is they redesigned these into like, I call them like shotgun style buildings, like lofts, because they're long, narrow units. Typically, they'll come from the back hallway, and then every unit, they're trying to have a window in every unit. So it's long, narrow, and you're living in a space that's, what do you think, about 50, 60 by 20, or somewhere around there?
I was only in one of the smaller ones, but the layout is,
Yeah.
it was long and skinny, for sure.
Yeah. And they built some additional units on the roof. There was 4 steel frame ones on the roof, and they're quite inferior and undesirable. So and they have preserved all of the elements, the timber framing, the deck, wooden ceiling, added the requirements they were supposed to add, mod by, which is an elevator, barrier-free access, so it's a step down to the lower floor. And the lower floor is available for rent, commercial. They've had a number of tenants come and go in this site. I'm just trying to remember, because this guy's got 3 buildings. This was originally, first tenant was, I think, Low Windows Display Suite. That lasted 10 years after renovation. They left, and he had it vacant for a year or 2, and I've forgotten who the new tenant is in there. So what we're looking at the actual income, and I told you I agreed with the assessor on the management side. And the reason for it, of course, is they're not trying to be deceptive in any way whatsoever, but they have numerous properties, and they manage them out of the building just half a block away, and those are their interdepartmental costs for management of all their sites. So it's a little higher, the allocation for this building. So we have trimmed it as well. Page 2, we adjusted it to $34,577 from the $70,000 reported to apply at 5%. There's one small mistake in this one, just one, that's it, the parking lot income. Person who did this wasn't aware that the parking lot was part of it. It's for residential parking. There's a gate on it to prevent other people from going in it, and you have to keypad your way in. So it's all residential users. Costs a little bit more to maintain. So on my page 2, so this is taken right from the statements, which were on my page 4. And originally, the NOI, as I said, we believed it was artificially too low to account for the management differential. The further adjustment is that the income from the parking has to go back in. So my number, I'll be the least confusing I can. Page 2, bottom right-hand corner. NOI 240,941 should be changed to 276,641. That's to reflect 35,000 for the parking.
Can you repeat that number, please?
276,641. To add back in 35,700 for parking. The extended value at the 6.6% is 419153, no. Sorry, the scribbles all over my page here. Yes, 419530.
So which number are we replacing?
3650620,
Right,
and that rounds to 4,192,000. The commercial side remains the same, and 668,000. The total being 4,860,000. Somewhat similar to the last assessment, but I think we are impacted by growing repair and maintenance costs in a 1907 building. After the renovation, of course, there's a brief period where your expenses are lower, but then they begin to catch up. They've had other costs that they've had to incur for reuse of the basement. After their first tenant left, there were some code upgrade costs that impacted the commercial side costs. And as with a building where the use is mixed, they are not running separate streams for costs. They're putting all their costs totalized, not broken, but their commercial rents are provided separately. And there's one issue, I just wanna quickly check 7.6. If that's right. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Barakis, questions of Mr. Neufeld?
Do you know the vacancy rate on this property?
No, they don't declare it, they just provide the gross rent roll. They've been moderately pleased with it, and I think one of their advantages is that they do have the parking, which has helped keep it stable.
Has there been any recent capital expenditures on this property?
There's been some repair in the basement. After the last party moved out, they had to redo some, there was some, the foundation wall had some mortar failure, and they had to repair that. And they had an elevator issue, that's, it wouldn't be capital in that case, and the foundation repair wasn't a major expense. It was more to do with the pointing.
Do you know, did that occur in 2017?
I think it was as they were preparing to put it back on the market.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Billinghurst, questions?
How far is the second parking lot from the building?
Across the street, across Pacific.
It's quite close.
Yeah.
That was my only question, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Upton?
I don't think I have any, thank you.
Did I hear you say they built some units on the roof?
Yes, they added some units on the roof.
Does that show up anywhere in the?
No, it
picture?
doesn't because from below, you can't see them, it's set back. If you look at the picture on page
The top of
3.
page 3, it doesn't show? Would it
Yeah,
show?
it's the white ones here. Sorry, did I say
Oh, okay.
4? It's 6.
And that was done back in, prior to 2012?
It was when the original work was done.
Okay.
Wait, I did bring this in case you needed to refer to it.
Well, I don't need the exact.
No, I
date
have
that it was done.
the center venture contract. So, just to the details on it.
That's fine. I don't,
Okay.
we don't need that. I just was curious.
It was one of the earlier center venture projects.
Have you been in?
Yeah, well, I've appraised it twice, 2009.
You've been in the ones on the roof, then, the newer
Yes,
ones?
yes.
They're nice units?
No, they made them with steel frame, and they're like, oh, I can't turn the microphone off. They're like bad motel units. They have a little loft area in them, but very noisy. And kind of, they're not, they don't have a great, well, they have the view here, but they're not pleasant. You can see that each of them have a little patio in front of them, so that there's 6 little patio areas. No, I don't care for them, but.
Okay, thank you. That is all my questions, and that will conclude.
Just a quick summary on this.
Yes, go right ahead.
I have appraised this property twice for 2 different reasons. I have permission to disclose limited information about it because I did the appraisal. And we did it for various reasons.
This is new information that you're giving us here, not a summary.
It's been presented in the past as evidence. It's nothing new. 7.375% is my cap rate overall. Though it was, I couldn't make my mind up between 7.25 and 7.5, so I just picked in the middle. Yeah, and we're looking at 7.07.
Thank you. Summation, any, okay. Thank you. I think we will take a short break. Okay, we'll call the hearing back to order, and we will begin with item number 3, 265 Portage Avenue.
All right, file 19-434, roll number 13096158700-265, Portage Avenue, Resam, 11,300,000. It's got commercial component. I believe it's on the first 3 floors. First 3 floors of this place, memory serves. It's school tax exempt. Manitoba Start, it's like an employment solutions area for immigrants. They do like acclimatizing them, getting them suited up better to acclimatize to Canada. So seminary learning gets a school tax exemption on that. 2 buildings, 6 stories, actually year built 1904 to 1906, effective year build 95 to 99, 75 suites, 37 indoor parking spots, 0 outdoor parking spots, construction class C, masonry bearing walls. Page 2, request for income information. They've handed in their mailers. You'll see on page 3, out of the 75 units, we've got 68 1-bedroom units and 72 bedroom units. So you get a better idea of the type of building we're looking at if you flip to page 19 of my report. It shows pictures of the exterior, turn of the century heritage restoration project, 1 block west of Portage and Main, completely renovated with modern interiors, stylish open concept floor plans, 75 rental units, 230 square foot of commercial space spread over 6 stories and 2 buildings. So you can see from the ad taken from the internet, there's some pictures of the place, giving you an idea of what the interior looks like. The pictures following, they show an inspection of the commercial space on the lower portion. just giving you an idea of the quality of the finish. There's classrooms in there, they qualify for the school tax exemption. So, going back to page 3, you'll see our summary, our income model summary, and $917.93 on the average rent. With model parameters, comes up to a value of $11,300,000, with a blended cap of 5.48. So, page 4 shows the rent that's assigned to the different streams, $11.51 for the commercial area. Rent comparables are on page 5 for this property. Shows we are lower than the nearby comps in the area. Newer buildings, more floors other than comparable number 3, 1, 2, and 3 have 20, 17, and 17 stories. So looks like on the rent side of the coin, our income is supported. Comparable leases are on page 5, ranging from $12 to $21.45. That one seems to be the outlier of the group. So comparables 2, 3, and 4, they themselves are slightly higher than the commercial rent that's being assigned to the school exempt portion. So, looks like we're covered there. Our cap charts are on 6, 8, and 7. Page 13 shows the mailer, and similar to 230 Princess. I reviewed this, and page 18 shows a similar table where the management was high and the R&M per unit seemed higher than what we typically see. So stabilize the management at 5 of their residential effective gross income, and using running a 2,000 per unit scenario with the blended cap shows the total calculated value using this scenario at 11,056,000 rounded. Our model value is 11,300,000. It's a 2%. It's a 2.2% difference. So we are pretty close. And again, this is just a scenario that I run using 2,000 a unit on this place. So looks like we're pretty close in terms of the income. If you went to 11,056,000 rounded, I don't think you'd be wrong to do that either. So, running a more normalized scenario on this property brings the value very close to what our model value is. So I didn't make a change. I'd say running 2,000 a unit. If you look at the pictures on page 19, shows that it's all redone on the inside. Therefore, I didn't make a change to the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
Yes, page 3, is this all from the model, the workup?
Yes.
Okay, and then been no overrides on this?
Oh, actually, no. The actual rent seems to be, it was overridden to, the model rent was overridden to the actual. So
Oh, okay.
There is an override on it.
Okay,
yes.
so, all right. but that one factor was changed to actuals, which was the rent.
Yes.
But you didn't change the expense rate to the rent, actuals, did you?
No, you're correct.
And the model was based on effective year 95 to 99?
Yes.
And can you tell us what was done to improve the age of this property by 93 years?
I got any old comments here. I believe it was empty before, was it not? I know in 2011, they constructed 3-story addition on top of the third floor of an existing multi-use commercial residential building. So it looks like they added 3 stories onto the top of an older building in 2011. Staged interior and exterior alterations, work to include new canopy, window replacement, construction of parking ramp, basement tenant storage, landlord work for future main floor, and mezzanine commercial space. This was back in 2011. So as I'm reading it, it looks like they added 3 stories onto an older building.
And were there any changes to frame and foundation?
To the lower part, not to my knowledge.
Do you know anything about the history of this building?
I do not.
Did you, are you not showing the last sale?
Oh, I don't have any sales here on it. So I don't have any record of sale on my break.
When was the renovation done?
2011 as per the permits I'm looking at my files.
Okay, so you're not showing a 2010 sale for $1?
Dollar sale?
No, $1. It's not a dollar sale though. Actual value, $1.
No.
Does your model account for requirements for affordable housing?
Requirements for,
Well, like affordable housing grants are handed out to people who build this, and
Oh.
in return, they have to cap the rents
Uh,
for some specified number of units. Does your model take that into account?
no, it does not.
So your average rent for the subject is $917. If I told you that their cap is $650 on 6 units, should that not affect something in your model?
650.
Now, you said you've already gone to the actual income, so I
Mhm.
imagine that was someone's concept of dealing with it, but when you do that, don't you also have to adjust the expense ratio because you're earning less money? And your expenses haven't been reduced by the Affordable Housing Initiative?
Well, looking at what they actually reported as collecting, 748, 700 on the apartment side, plus 8774 for laundry, plus 58,362 equals 815. We
Right.
get 1,000 for storage. So they're reporting that they've collected on the residential side 816.
Right.
And we've got 801 for effective gross income, so it doesn't look like when you consider all sources of revenue that were overstating the residential income.
No, and you said that earlier, that there was an override for the income side.
That was for the commercial income side,
Oh,
not,
commercial side.
not for the
Oh, okay.
apartments.
Well, all right. But you do have 917 a unit in place on this thing, right?
Yes.
Now, does your model account for registrations as a historical building?
No, it does not.
And have you inspected?
We were in the main floor for the tax exemption.
Right,
at
right.
one time, but the residential part I have not.
Okay, you haven't been in the residences yet.
No, I haven't.
I didn't take you up there and make you walk the plank on those balconies. That would've been funny.
Well, we'd see who go over.
Well, you might have tipped, huh?
Yeah.
It- yeah, Within this, today, maybe I'll get this out of the way, we are seeing some variances in capitalization rates based on ages that the assessors apply to buildings. And I have noted that when a building has its, using its, close to its original age, that you're capping at 6.6% on residential and 9.5% on commercial. Is that about right for the age? Not the effective age, but the original age?
The original age. Sorry, could you say that one more time?
That your model is providing a rate of 6.6% on multifamily and 9.5 on commercial?
For multifamily, yes. For commercial-
That's the rate, 6.6 prior to 1946?
Yes, that's correct, that is correct.
So how does a 1905 building jump so far ahead to 1990? Like, how does somebody come to that decision?
Well, as per the permits, we added 3 stories on top of it.
Partial stories on the one building.
So, in terms of adjusting our effective ages, I mean, it is a judgment call. The assessor goes out and reviews the property. Something they do take into consideration is the rents. When you change the effective age, it does change the amount of rent that the model assigns to the property. So, in reviewing actual financial statements that the property owner submits to us, the effective age would be adjusted to ensure that we're not overstating or understating the rents that they're actually showing, given that those rents are actually reflective of what the model is, not like a social housing rent group to income.
The question was, how do you get from 1905 to 1996?
Judgment of the assessor at the time.
And the fact that it's been frozen by the historical designation doesn't come into effect?
The historical designation.
Well, a historical designation is in place on this property and it freezes certain of the elements from change. If elements have been frozen, how can you upgrade them to say it's newer?
I'm not familiar with what.
Oh, thanks.
It does look like our rent is not overstated.
Okay, thank you, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Upton, questions?
Do you have any permit values on that? And you said it was 3 stories were added.
So in 2011, we got 1.5 million on a construct a 3-story, 4,209 square foot addition. on top of the third floor.
Number 1 million?
1 million, 1,000,005.
Okay.
1.5 million.
Yep.
And then the interior, exterior alterations are 1, 2. Then I've gone 2011, interior, exterior alterations, new canopy, window replacement, parking ramp, construction for 1 million.
So that included adding the 3 floors, you said?
This one in 2011 says constructed the 4,209 square foot addition on top of the third floor.
2,000 square feet?
4,209 square
Oh,
feet.
okay. Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Hillenhurst?
No questions.
And I have no questions.
So just a follow-up, all you have on record is $2.5 million in permit costs?
That's what I have from 2011 here. Going forward, I don't know if there's been other permits taken out, unfortunately, I've been
No, I'm
rushing through this.
going backwards. Yeah, nothing?
I don't have notes on it, I'd have to go back and look. It seems a bit low.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, this time I'm not gonna forget what I'm supposed to do here. First of all, a little bit of rebuttal. I'm only handing this out to show you that we're not the only one dealing with the historical designation issue. This property is designated, as is the prior building. It's in the evidence, you'll see that I did divide it for the last building, and in this one, I've put in the workup as well. And that's on page 10. There's actually 2 buildings, 10 to 12 are on the registry. Known as the Avenue Building for the longest time. Anyone older than our assessor would remember that it was vacant, empty for probably 40 years. The inhabitants were pigeons, and for the longest time, the city was looking for someone to take it over. They did. They sold it for $1, a real number, $1. They had to give it away. So the owner here bought it for $1, spent money in it. He did get some grant money from affordable housing and from Center Venture to assist. Part of that grant money required him to have at least 6 units that were under $650. This is the same, and I forgot to mention at 230 Princess, it's the same owner, the same development plan, and it's the same restrictions and, on that, providing the affordable housing in order to get the grants. And it helps them to fix these buildings up, because oftentimes the cost of fixing them is more than their market value, but that was the incentive to turn it around. So they performed that and built it out, and it still carries the historical designation. The actual income, which has now been running in operation for 5-6 years, solid years, we're showing on our page 4, with an NOI of $490 with both units, and we did adjust the management costs downwards. Our NOI for both sides ended up being $551 after that adjustment. And that's on page 2. So our calculations, we've shown our work to show how we arrived at each of the numbers. The rent from the first floor tenant, the startup is the correct amount that they're getting, and as are the rest of the rents. breakdown, which we've capped, is the bottom right-hand side on the second column. So the NOI relating to the residential portion is 348,426. We're using 6.6%, so that is 5,279 rounded to 5,279,000. The commercial portion is capped at 9.5%, and that goes to 2139,373 rounded to 2139 for a total value of 7,418. Now, as in the other property, I have appraised this property twice for various reasons. I can discuss that our applied cap rate in both cases was in the mid-sevens. At one time, one of the appraisals was 8.2, the other was 7.37. And in that calculation, we had to, we actually inspected the site several times going through the property. And when you renovate a property, there are 5 major elements that the residential tenancy branches focuses on. But we tend to focus on the heart and the soul, the core. So the 5 major elements are frame, foundation, envelope, mechanical, and interior. In this case, mechanical had to be upgraded. Well, it didn't even have to be upgraded, it had to be installed. There was none. And the interior was redone, and parts of the envelope were changed, specifically the windows and the balconies. But the foundation and the framing hasn't. So this doesn't change the effective year by very much. If we believed in the concept of effective year, it may have brought it to a 1928 year. Certainly not 1990. In order to bring your effective date to 1990, you actually have to use 1990's construction material. Steel frame, curtain walls, to code. This is an adaptation. So it didn't change. So we've been through, now the balconies, by the way, are the scariest things you've ever been in because they're narrow. There's no visible support and you're overhanging a busy street. Imagine they're what's called smoking balconies, so people can go out. They're not, they're very uncomfortable. On our inspection, one person would go out and they said, well, come on out here. I said, no, you come back in first before I'm going out. I'm not going out there with, they just don't feel good. But, imagine that there's sound because the steel insert that was put in there is braced against the inside of the wall. And then there's further bracing on the inside of the wall. But the Avenue building is the Avenue building, and we'll always remember it as being a big open building that was empty, vacant, stripped, with Dominion News operating on the first floor, how it was for years. Now, the last 2 years of the assessment cycles, the last 2 cycles, I should say, are under appeal. And I'm not pleased that that's happened, because this is not a new building. This is a 1905, 1906 building. And when that's impacted by heritage designations, low income requirements, and its own physical limitations. Maybe someone wants to claim a political victory, we've renovated downtown and created value. You haven't. You spent public money to get an eyesore, instead of demolishing it, turning it into some revenue production. So, they're not following appropriate appraisal techniques at all on this. It's just guesswork by changing the date. Had the dates been applied properly, we probably wouldn't even have had an appeal here. Now on page 6 and 7 are the properties today. These are the workups from the assessor's files, the internal documents that show how they're valued. And what we found incredibly interesting is this jumping up and down. These are all the old buildings. So one has a 5% cap, the first one on multi, 9.5 on the retail. You go to the next building, and, which is 265 Portage, which is this one, 5% cap on the apartments, 6.75 on retail. The next one you're gonna hear is a 1921 building, 6.6% on multi, 7.2 on commercial. And then the newer one is listed there as well. Now, I think it's fairly safe to say that the cap rate for 1905 building is going to be 6.6 on multi and 9.5 on retail. And I think what we're dealing with today on the three properties in the docket is a very confusing application of cap rates that was directed by a mistake on the concept of effective age. It's not a 1990 building. It's 05 and 06. And the reason, the concept of the historical designation that freezes it, I think the base story is a third party kind of summing up what those problems are. I've been saying it for years. You put a historical designation on and you're causing problems. Here we have another party who's done a major report and said, we can't do anything to this building, it's not worth anything unless we can do something to it. And that's the truth. I've appeared before committees on representing historical buildings, opposing them. Because there are 4 levels of committee that you go through: historical, standing, executive, and then council. And they are determined that anything that gets entered is going to get certified historical. And what they do is they freeze the elements of this, and here's the irony. They are freezing elements of the building at 1905.
Excuse me.
When the owner would love to have a 1995 building. He would love to do changes on this. He can't because he's frozen. And yet the assessor goes and says, well, no, it really is 1995 because we say so. But the historical committee won't let them do that. Now, the most absurd examples of this, and I did not represent this building in their designation because it was automatic on this building. But the elements are the exterior, the brick, signage, it's all listed here, what's protected. One particular building I'm dealing with has wood banisters that the historical committee decided must be kept. You can't.
You can, yeah.
But you know the problem there is you can't put in someone who into a government tenant into a building with wood banisters because it's not fire suppressed, safe. So this is what they're doing. So there's a disconnect there. So if that's the other reason it's being driven down, and that's my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
Do you think this is a good location for office retail?
No. North Portage historically had a bad rap. Parts that are getting better, but in general, North Portage is bad. Our company is trying to deal with another historical building in it. We talked to 3 people, and you know what they all said? Oh, I didn't know there was a giant tiger right there. I don't want this building. It's just the truth of the market.
And this Hudson's Bay article you brought in, this is a different type of property functionally, right?
Yeah, it is. The concept is that the restraints on allowing development forbid an alternate use or any change and impact the value. And that concept is similar with all historical designations. Our city it is disconnected between its desire to preserve historical buildings and it balancing it with the economic factors. Other locales know they have to pay compensation. So you can't preserve without paying the cost.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Upton, question?
Yeah, you're showing 8.1% vacancy. Is that actual in this building, or is that?
No, it's full. There's only one tenant. What we're doing is going from the Johnson report and looking at downtown retail, downtown office, miscellaneous, and blending the number. So, you know, we have all the documentation here, office. Downtown miscellaneous is actually 12%. And let's see, retail, downtown, there's actually no inventory, no real inventory downtown, so it's a bit misleading, but, central, well, now they say 1.2%, but then when you go and look at the data, there's like 6 sites available for lease, or something like that. Not reliable.
Okay. But the building is actually full, you're saying?
It's only one tenant, and yes, it's full. It was, you still have to apply a vacancy risk, so
Sure.
that's what we've applied.
Okay. And you said that the last assessment's up to the community board?
The last 2.
Last 2?
Yeah.
It was approximately $11 million last time.
11, yes, 10.8.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Any question?
I have no questions either. That will conclude 265-40. We'll move on to 279, Portage, item number 4.
So we're going to ask for this to be confirmed, save ourselves some time. This is a new assessment, and so we didn't have the details, so.
Okay,
We found that the 6.6% multifamily cap rate, to be fair, so. You could say it louder.
yeah. Would you like to repeat that, please? No, just kidding. Okay, you're asking to be confirmed,
And
if you could read it into the record.
Or we could withdraw it. After I've entered my 6.6, I can even withdraw it. Is that better?
Withdrawal would be better, right, I think.
Do you have a preference, Mr. Assessor?
Whatever you want, it's up to you.
Okay, let's withdraw.
Okay.
After the 6.6 was read into the record.
So that takes us to item number 5, 1830 Portage Avenue.
All right, file number 19-4608. 1830.
One second, if you would, please, Matthew.
Okay, file number 19-4608, roll number 07021 333 1830 Portage Avenue. Assessed value $1,195,000. It's another Res M. It's got $94,000 worth of 2 buildings, 1 to 3 stories. 1952, we don't have any effective age applied to this property. 12 suites, 6, we have 6 indoor parking and 2 outdoor parking spots. Construction class C masonry, bearing walls. Go to page 2. You see that they're good at hanging their mailers. There's a sale of the property, January 4th, 2016, $975,000 on it. Page 3 of the 12 units, 9 are 1 bedroom, 3 are 2 bedroom. For 12 total units are modeled. Rent is $789.81. So we've got our model parameters here. Blended cap of 5.28 to get our valuation of $1,195,000. Go to page 4. You'll see subject market income. Here we've got $10.83 per square foot for the 727 square foot. I believe it's like a decorating business that's located to the rear of the subject property. So page 5 shows rent comps in the area down that neck of Portage for the apartment side, the coin. So what we have here says they're collecting $109,978 on page 13. We've got our residential effective gross income at 110,776, so we're pretty close in that regard. Got the model expense ratio at 49.29. Page going back to page 13. One thing to note is I did an analysis, page 13 here. The repair and maintenance is very high, $5,500 per unit on it, which is many times more than what we typically see on a go-forward basis. So I would suspect that there would be some capital expenditure involved in this building. So running a scenario of $1,500 per unit, which is more typical. The calculated net operating income is similar to the model net operating income. It's about 4,000 off. However, I would like to inspect this place to see what sort of work is actually going on in there, because we are looking at current condition. Perhaps the rent has gone up since then, but I don't have post-reference information. If you go to page 16, you'll see that they spent a lot of money on repair and maintenance. Then too, if you take the 51,255 and you divide it by 12 units, you got another year where you're, this year you're 44,271 per unit. So again, many times more than what we typically see when we review income expense statements. In 2015, you got 30 on page 18, 37, 783. And so you divide that by 12, and you've got 3,148 units. So it looks like they've been doing quite a lot there. It's interesting to note, despite the high amounts, they haven't earmarked any of it as capital. So in order to get the current condition correct, it would be good if we could after the appeal season, get in there and take a look at what's actually going on. Nevertheless, we've got modeled expenses applied to this property. Our modeled income does fall in line with what they are actually reporting as they're getting. So on the commercial side of this place, they didn't submit any commercial expenses to us. This is, or income information. This has been something that has gone through the past couple of times at the Board of Revision in this regard. And I inquired about whether non-compliance was appropriate. And what I was told to do is, because we haven't addressed it in the past and corrected the fact that they should be bringing it in, I've been instructed to just inform that if you could tell your client to submit, or else we're gonna go for non-co-op in the future, because it's been on us for the past couple of years not telling them when it gets to this level that they should be doing that. So we use model rents on this, down that way, down, now these rental units are on Portage. Our spot is on Portage, but the retail unit is tucked in behind it, so the exposure is not as good, just disclosing that. At $10.83 a square foot, it is bracketed by the comparable leases in place. So, in absence of information, I didn't make a change. That's my presentation, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfeld, do you have any questions on?
I'm just recovering from that tough talk. Page 3, was this done by the model? All of
Yes.
this? So there's no overrides here?
No overrides.
Okay. And any chance you've inspected it, I guess not, considering your comments?
No.
And do you have any idea what's done in the commercial unit?
What's done, like in
Yeah.
terms of their business?
What uses, yes, that's
I
correct.
think it's a decorating company.
It's Oswald Decorating, correct? And it's the same owner, same name as the owner in the last title? Vendor?
I don't have the title on me.
Okay, so you weren't aware it was the owner's own space?
No.
And what would make you think that he didn't declare his expenses? That they weren't?
Oh, no, he didn't declare the income he was collecting on the mailer he submitted to us.
Right, which on the owner's space is 0, correct?
It would be good if he indicated that.
Okay. So, on page, sorry, I was just looking for that, that little, page 13. You indicate at the bottom of it 2 potential NOI streams, and this is just from the multifamily, correct?
Yes.
So whether it be by your adjustment for the actuals or the model, then you would then add some revenue for the commercial unit.
The box on the bottom here is just an analysis
Right.
of the residential
No,
side.
that's fine, but I just want to point out that you do have to add the commercial revenue stream to it, which you've done, for example, on page 3 for the model.
Yeah, we have a commercial revenue stream.
Okay, so page 3 for the model says $63,144 as the NOI. Now, did you compare that with the sale to find a cap rate?
No, I did not.
Okay, disagree that it's 6.48% from the model?
Yeah,
6.48, okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Upton, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Miller? I have no questions either. You would like to present
Thank you.
yourself?
So the property sold. The high expenses, we again agree with the assessor on the expense ratio, except we know the reason why. One of the Oswalds had passed away, and the family was interested in selling it, so they were spending some money on getting it ready for sale. The expense ratio was too high. Prior hearings 2 years ago, we did make an adjustment for this when it was still being operated. This time around, we also made an adjustment for it. And we're very similar NOIs to what the assessor has. What we did is looked at the actuals, adjusted it down, upwards for the over. Now, first of all, getting back to the repairs, there is nothing wrong with what they've done. They are not capital repairs, but they were what we would call deferred maintenance, which was all fixed at one time. So we had 20 years of neglect, and hey, let's sell this thing, let's fix up all the little things that are wrong with it. It's not renovation. Sort of like, you're selling your car, maybe I'll take it to a detailer and put some new tires on it and change the oil. It's exactly those sorts of expenditures, because they did have some lead up time to the market. Now, it was advertised for sale. The purchaser ended up being the company that was doing the property management. They added it to their own portfolio, so they were knowledgeable about the building. And we worked with them to work out the NOI on the expenditures, because they did have a breakdown of the expenditures for us. And I have the new folder, I don't have the old folder, they're in my old folder. So our NOI on it was 64,155 as the actual adjusted. Based on the sale, that's a cap of now 6.58, a little bit different from the assessor's 648, but a great deal different from the applied rate of 5.28, the actual cap. What we're just looking for is the actual sale at 975,000. With the allocation we have listed below, 69,000 for class 60 and 906,000 for class 20 at the sale price. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Barakis?
Yeah. So for the sale in 2016, it was purchased by the former property manager?
That's correct.
So that would be an associated sale. Would you consider that arm's length?
After my review of it, I was comfortable that it met the standards of market. Again, we're not dealing with mass appraisal techniques, we're dealing with site specific. So the property went through a brokerage company. It was offered, it was brought to the market and exposed to the market, so it wasn't a closed sale, for one, but, and they were the best bidder. They had to bid to buy it, but there wasn't a lot of interest in it. We think a lot of people got turned off by the commercial element in the back.
Okay. So have you inspected this property?
I was in it prior to the repair work being done.
Okay, so do you know offhand what sort of repairs were done?
Just overall general deferred maintenance, just things weren't fixed as required. So if you had suite turnover, it'd be the big one. Instead of, typically what you should be doing in this day and age is you review all your appliances. If they're older than a certain amount, you replace them. You replace cabinets if there's cracks and or issues with them. Everything was just left. Maybe you got a coat of paint, maybe they shampooed the rugs. That was what the former owner wanted to do. So the 3 years, which you quite fairly and accurately described of higher maintenance costs, were as suites were turned over, doing a more thorough turnover on them. Not capital, just compressed. What we had was 10 years worth of work compressed in the last 3. really what was done.
So, at that amount, were they, so they were fixing them up as they became open?
Right, yes.
So, when they became open, were they doing kitchens, bathrooms?
As required, every unit was, would be spec'd out separately and the work was turned over to the property manager to farm out through their contacts to get it done. It was, again, it's just a change in philosophy of, some people go through a thorough checklist every time they turn over an apartment and do it regardless. Some people do as required, this wasn't done at all. So like I said, you had 10, 15 years of not doing anything, all done in the last 3. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I'm guessing a lot of the, I don't know specifically, I don't have my list, but a lot of the, it'd be a lot of appliance turnover and cabinets and replace carpets, not shampoo.
So, and have these repairs, because we're looking at current condition, would they be going on, like, on an ongoing basis into the future as places open, as units open up?
Was still some work required after sale on that basis. Now, the work after sale, one of the approaches they'll probably be using on this is hoping for some above guideline increases on rent, which is just normal practice. And it's, you spend more money to get a higher rent, but your NOI stays the same. You're hoping that your payoff down the road, 10 years from now, shows up. So they did report to me that there were some costs that they were not prepared for, that they had to spend after their purchase. But $975 was the sale, and I think the parties knew what they were getting into mostly.
Okay, so for that sale between the former property manager and the vendor, given that they knew what they were getting into, would it be likely that it would be purchased based on the income stream?
It was purchased on the revenue, on a potential revenue, which you and I are very, very close on. And sometimes there is a convergence of beliefs. I mean, we generally do end up arguing at cap rates rather than the income generally. And so you work close on income that they thought was to be applied as well. We just, here's an actual cap.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marla, questions? Mr. Upton, questions?
No question.
Thank you.
So there was work to be done after the sale?
Yeah, when I talked to the manager, he said, yeah, they missed a couple of things on the sale. But he's, microphones, and let's just say he's a little fussy. So when he says there's lots of things, and then he goes, look what I had to spend here, it's like $800. And he's a little bit shocked by that. So I don't have the dollar amount.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes 1830 Portage. And I think it concludes Mr. Mufeld's presentations. Thank you for coming. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take a short break. Call the hearing back to order. We will begin with item number 6, 160 Smith Street.
Yes. Rebuttal? Is that your name?
Jared Story?
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you start, Katie? Yep. Do you need this?
No, I have enough for
Oh, okay, it had the.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you can switch it out, I guess. I'll
Okay,
s-
what is that? This is evidence?
Yeah, I'll switch it with you.
Okay, I just wasn't sure, cause it had the,
Yeah, it's-
sticker on.
I guess it's good to have that way.
Or wait, I just won't write on it and I'll give it to you later.
$120?
160 Smith Street.
Yeah. I'll switch it. Thanks. Oh,
This one has an exhibit sticker also.
That's all right.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that.
Not to worry. Mr. Baracus, when you're ready,
Okay.
it's all yours.
Second here.
Excuse me.
Okay. File number 19-1841, 160 Smith Street, roll number 1209327, 8,000. It's a Res M, 20 stories, assessed value 35,078,000, 5,241,000 of it is commercial. Just glancing ahead for the purposes of efficiency, it doesn't look like it's being contested for this property. So I'll focus my attention on the residential side. So 3 buildings, 20 stories, effective year built 2012. So we've got buildings that were built at multiple times. At 72, 2012, 185 suites, 190 indoor parking on a separate building on the property. And 61 outdoor parking spots. Multiple use, as construction class C, masonry bearing walls. If you go to page 2, we see they've been handing in the mailers. Our most recent sale was out of sale in 2006, 8,943,000. Of the 185 units, there's 145 one bedroom, 42 bedroom. Our parameters, they're all modeled. So our combined income summary for the entire property, we've got a net operating income of $1,869,463 with our blended cap 5.33. That's how we get our 35,078,000. That's just a small, I guess, rounding thing in terms of me doing that in Microsoft Excel. If you go to page 4, you'll see the market income breakdown for the various income streams. Given that we agree on the commercial, I'm not gonna dwell on it. For rent, we've got $1,178 for the 185 suites on average for our rental comps, page 5. You can stroke out comp number 2. That looks like the system didn't crank out the correct rents. It's not 580 per unit, so strike that one out. So we've got comparables 1, 3, and 4, ranging from $1,126 to $1,200 on the rent. Our average monthly rent is bracketed by the comparables. comparables are a mix of bachelor and 1 and 2 bedrooms. 128 Smith is the one that has the bachelor units. Comparables 1 and comparable 3 do not. And those comparables bracket subject property in term of rents. The following pages 6, 7 just show the commercial aspect, the commercial aspects, comparable leases, so we agree I'm not touching on it. Our cap rates, page 8A, you guys are familiar with these, you know, there's examples, they're not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. We've got our municipal assessment act excerpts, and then our preamble in regards to our non-recoverable, being at 2% based on examples in the market on page 12. So we have our income and expense statements. On page 15. It looks like it's all blended together in terms of the expenses, repairs and maintenance, whatnot, so wasn't able to break it apart in any way. In regards to that, I just went with the modeled income and expenses. If you keep going through my report, you'll see starting on page 22, you'll see pictures for the units. So it's new on the inside. It looks like that's granite countertop, mirror cabinets, floor, I think it's redone and painted. Then on page 26 and page 28, you have the most recent orders on this place, just to give you an idea of where it sits right now. So last go around, it was cut from 33,044,000. 2016, it was cut from 36 million to 32,268. Both times they use 5% capitalization rates. So for our cap rates on the apartment side, we've got 5% on it, so it looks like we're falling in line with what's historically been decided on this property. That's my evidence, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
Yes,
of
thank you
Mr.
very much.
Baracus?
Absolutely. Okay, so now we're at the corner of Smith and York, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so now that's, just so we're all on the same page, that's, now we're not contesting the other side of this assessment, but that's where the lobby on York was, the Oyster Kitchen and now Carne Chop House, right?
Yes.
And they've built a parkade as well, which we're not contesting. Now, have you done any research into the history of this property?
No.
Are you aware that this used to be the Sheraton Hotel?
No.
Okay, so then you're likely not aware that before it was the Sheraton Hotel, it was an apartment building called the House of York.
I didn't do a history report on it.
Okay, so just so we're clear, it was an apartment building, a hotel, now it's back to an apartment building. Okay. Does the model capture the fact that this asset has been repositioned at least 3 times?
No.
Okay. Now, we're gonna talk about cap rate today, because that's effectively where we're diverging, but if you're an investor, having known that, would that give you confidence, or would that give you a sense of uneasiness?
Well, apartment must have been a better course of action if they tried the hotel first, so maybe they know they don't have to convert it to a hotel.
Okay, but do you think it's generally a positive or a negative in the market, in the mind of a right-thinking, profit-motivated purchaser, that this asset has been repositioned a number of times?
We're assessing it in its current condition, and it is an apartment,
Okay,
which is what someone.
but we are talking about cap rates, correct? We will talk about cap rates today. So, okay, page 2. We have a sale for $8.9 million, and the city is suggesting today that the asset ought to be valued at $35 million. Now that would equate to roughly a 300% increase, is that correct?
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. Okay, well, now we've got, and I would suggest that based on the fact that it was a hotel that was converted and converted back, I would suggest that we have an inappropriate suite mix. Would you agree with me? We have 145 one-bedrooms and 42 bedrooms.
145 inappropriate, like what do you mean by inappropriate?
Well, the city of Winnipeg in their income valuation manual suggests that one of the factors that affects value is the suite mix. Would you say that this is an ideal suite mix or an unideal suite mix from the eyes of the next potential purchaser?
I don't think there's anything wrong with the suite mix.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Now this, we mentioned that this building has a parking structure, and I believe too that, if we go back, sorry, I'm jumping around here, but the actual year built is 1972, and then you have a variance of 2012. Now, just to be clear, 2012 is when the parking structure was built, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And there was some conversion that's mostly recladding and redemising of the interior suites, and that happened in 2010, between 2010 and 2012, and that's what gave rise to the age variance from 72 to 2000. Is that correct?
I don't have notes in front of me, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay. So again, just, I know we've talked, this board has heard about effective age variances today, and I would suggest that the bones of this building are from 1972, not the year 2000, and should be approached as such. Now, if that were the case, would that affect the cap rate that's modeled by the city's mass appraisal program?
The fact that it's the
It's
building
from
itself.
1972, it's an old Sheraton hotel.
Yeah.
It would, and it would increase the cap rate, would it not?
Well, it's not original 1972, if you look at my pictures. On page 22, 23, 24.
Right, you're showing us the
25.
interior suites that have been
Yeah,
reused, right?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but nothing done to the foundation, to the envelope, nothing that would actually substantially extend the effective useful life. I mean, decorating is, that's good, but that's not foundation work, is it?
No, but it does, the interior renovations do allow
Okay.
the owner to generate a level of rent.
Okay. Now, let's flip quickly to your rent comps. Got some questions here. You've got 92 Princess. I know that building fairly well. Is that not are those not condos? That's the old Penthouse Furniture Building. It's called the Adelman Building. It's a heritage site in the Exchange District.
No, it's not showing up as condos in our system.
Did you check into any of these comps to see if they were appropriate?
Generated as per the parameters, they bracket the subject property in the general downtown area. There's not a lot of
Okay.
buildings like this, so
Right.
in full disclosure, it's not the easiest thing to find comparables for.
Fair enough. And again, just 1 and 3 are full rentals in the Exchange District. I know 165 McDermott, that's McDermott and Rory, that's the Porterhouse. And that's a very nice building. Okay, now, comp 2 is 190 Smith, that's the old Place Louis Riel. That's now the Antares Luxury Apartments, is that correct?
Yeah, we just talked about that.
Right,
one.
and you're saying that is an inappropriate average monthly rent?
Well, that average monthly rent is not correct, that $580.
Right.
That's
Okay,
not
so
what they're getting.
That's an interesting place. So they do, those are fully furnished suites, correct?
Just, are you disputing our
No, I
effective gross income?
I want to show that the model is not necessarily capturing the realities of our subject here. So it's not appropriate to, I don't know what the actual rent is. I mean, you say 580, but now it's not, okay, fine.
It's definitely not 580.
Right, yeah, it wouldn't
You guys
be-
can review after what 190.
Right, I think it's closer to 900 or so, but there's continental breakfast, it's like living in a hotel. The suites are
It's
smaller,
nice.
it's nice, there's a rooftop patio for your dogs on the 4th floor. It's true, it's an interesting place, it was converted from Class Luria. Okay, so it's just, that's not necessarily comparable, and then 128 Smith Street, I know that one too, that's right next to a building that we're going to talk about today. That's a low-rise, and those are fully furnished as well.
Aren't we low on the rent side for this?
Are they low on the rent side?
No, like, just looking at yours, like you've
Right.
got about 500,000 more on it.
Right, no, we'll get to that, I just wanna look at your comps here and see if they're appropriate. Okay, so we're not talking about the office space. Now, the office space is, it's owner occupied, and the vast majority of it is vacant, but we do have a lease in place with the restaurant. Okay, we're not disputing that. Okay, and you've got some photos here. Now, okay, and you have, you've shown here that we've disputed the value for the last 2 cycles at least, probably longer than that. So even though we might not necessarily agree with the quantum that the board has come to, we do believe that the city has an issue with over-assessing this building. Now, getting back to cap rates for a second, because I'm going to suggest that this building ought to carry a cap rate of 5.5 and not 5%. So my last question to you is, at the reference date, any potential purchaser would have been aware of all the new product coming onto the downtown market, is that correct?
They would do market research.
They would do
definitely.
market research.
They'd be sophisticated.
So
They'd
they'd
have
be
to borrow
aware.
a lot of money to take this on.
Right, so they'd be aware of the new product at Porterhouse, which you mentioned here, at Sherbrooke, on Assiniboine, 300 Main, and in True North Square, correct?
Yeah, they would definitely do their due diligence.
And that equates to over 1,000 new units coming on stream. Now, would that make a potential investor feel confident or generally uneasy, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, we just looked at the very first property in the stock at 190 Smith,
Right.
and it was declared that it sold for a lot more than what we assessed it for with a 4.8 cap. That one's only got,
190 Smith, I don't
that,
know.
but I'm just giving you an example
Okay.
of what's going on in the downtown market.
Right,
That one only has 2.6% vacancy as per 2017, and it came on stream 2017.
Okay.
So it looks like there's a real,
at the reference
Good
date of
demand.
2018,
yeah,
somebody who's looking to invest in multi-residential assets in the downtown of Winnipeg, would they feel confident or uneasy based on the fact that there's all this new product coming in to compete for tenants?
I think there's a lot of product coming in because there is such a demand, and it is, you know, downtown Winnipeg it's getting better with
Look
the
at the
shed.
vacancy, for example, there was mention made today of the vacancy at Assiniboine, so,
Well, the rents at Assiniboine, and I've been to that one, and I've inspected, I put that one on the roll, the rents at Assiniboine are much higher, like, we're talking like $600 on
okay,
average.
so
higher
cap
than
rate then is if part of the cap rate, or the cap rate is effectively the numerical expression of risk, and it equates to a feeling of confidence or a feeling of uneasiness with an investor. And part of that is let's call it the durability of the income stream, the predictability of the income stream going forward. With all this new competition, even if the demand is there, do you not think that there's going to be downward pressure on rents going forward, which would equate to a higher cap in the mind of a prudent investor?
I think there's pretty good demand for this type of property in downtown.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Billingers, questions?
No question.
Mr. Upton?
No questions, thank you.
Has the exterior of this building been refaced? You don't have a picture of the exterior in your brief, I don't think. Or do you?
I mean, looking at the Altus brief, just the picture itself, it looks like it's in
Okay, that's fine,
decent
I'll ask.
condition. Maybe he's better suited to answer that.
I'll ask that question of Mr. Story when the time comes. That's all my questions. Mr. Story, would like to take us through your information.
Okay, 160 Smith, again, we are at the corner of Smith and York, and this was the original House of York from 1971 to 1980. From 1980 to 2010, it was the Sheraton Hotel, and to preemptively answer your question, yes, the building has been refaced, or not refaced, but has been reclad. So you can see those units here. These were actually the balconies for the hotel, if you remember the old Sheraton. Okay. All right, so this building was built in 1972. Construction starts in 71, it opens in 73. It has 20 stories, 145 one-bedroom units, 42 bedroom units, for a total of 185 units. The city is suggesting an overall value for this asset of $35,078,000, which includes an office and restaurant portion that equates to $5,241,000, which we are not disputing. We are instead disputing the value of the realty. We are saying that a more appropriate value is $27,690,000. Not disputing the $5,241,000 on the other income streams, giving us a total requested value here today of $32,931,000. Now, this is largely based on an adjustment to the cap rate. As I've said, the city is using 5%. We think that's far too low, that's aggressively low, and with a cap rate of 5.5 is more reasonable. Now, you've all heard our cap rate evidence in the city, so I think you know both of our positions. The city is using sales that were purchased with the intention to renovate. We say that that's not appropriate based on board precedent from the Manitoba Municipal Board. I provided our cap rate evidence for your perusal, but it equates to this chart, and this is what we've got. So an asset between 1960 and 1979, in our opinion, should carry a cap rate of 6%, but we are recognizing that this building has had work done, though I would suggest that we're likely being very conservative. I would, as an investor, I would feel very uneasy about the repositioning of this asset and all the new product coming onto the market. Come with me please to page 9 of my brief. This is my workup. Now, I don't think much of this is going to be in dispute, because we're higher than the assessor on our NOI, and that's because we've used actuals. So the assessment department takes a modeled rent, a modeled vacancy rate, a modeled expense ratio, and a modeled cap rate, and comes to what they believe to be a fair market value. What we do is we'll take 3 years of income statements, stabilize them into what we believe is a most typical year, and then capitalize that resulting NOI with the cap rate that seems appropriate based on the site-specific performance of the asset. And that's an important point not to gloss over. The city's using modeling, they have a big job. There's a lot of assets that they need to put a value on. We have the benefit of being able to sit down and analyze each of our properties under appeal individually. So you'll see that our NOI is $1,522,932, slightly higher than the assessor's $1,491,861. And the material difference here is that the assessor's used a 5% cap, and we have used a 5.5% cap. So the resulting value here is that we're requesting that the realty portion of this assessment, the multiple residential realty portion, be amended from $29,837,000 to $27,690,000. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Received these questions from the assessor?
Yeah, so this type of property, is this more of a property for families or single people, young couples, would you say, in your opinion?
If you're asking about the
Type of tenant that would.
demographic.
Yeah, demographic.
I think in general, there's a perception of the downtown, part of it, let's just call it a stigma. I don't think that the downtown is generally drawing families as much as it is probably drawing younger people, students, newcomers. That's who I think the main market for downtown living is, for the most part.
So then, would the predominance of one-bedroom suites rather than two-bedroom suites not fit that bill better?
Perhaps, perhaps, I mean, that might be an economic reality, it's not the most maximally productive way to orient your suites, clearly, but I would suspect that perhaps the building's past two lives as apartments and as a hotel might affect how we demise that space. So, hard to say, but I would say that suite mix is not maximally productive. Does it fit the needs of the area, or does it fit that market? Perhaps, hard to say.
And just in regards to the cap, I mean, you guys have heard the cap back and forth for months now. But are you aware that for two of your properties, namely, I think it's 210 St. Anne's and 780 Beach, a much lower declaration of cap was made?
Well, I know that you sometimes bring a sheet with a number, with one
Yeah.
number written on with no calculations, so I know that you believe that. I don't think that's evidence, so.
Well, I just have to, he's got his cap rate, I have to hand this out as rebuttal.
Very good.
Do you think a sub-5 cap rate is reasonable in this market? Do you think anybody in this market sees a sub-5 cap rate as reasonable?
I think somebody already did.
There's,
I would suggest.
it's
that
the
this-
assessor's chance to ask questions.
Well, I'm for giving new information.
Thank you.
So again, you've seen this before, I'm not here to belabor anything.
Okay,
But also not downtown, not high rises.
That's true, that's true.
5.5 on St. Mary's, so I mean, I think I'm actually too low on the cap rate on the subject, but that's what our research would indicate to us, so I will stick with that.
Okay.
okay.
All right, and then, okay, well, I'm not gonna go through the cap rate study. Do you think those R and Ms in the cap rate study ranging from $332 per unit to $1,072 per unit, are those sustainable?
No, I think that you're capturing a moment in time. I don't think that, I think clearly somewhere around $1,000 a suite is probably more likely. You'd have to look at what has happened directly before, directly after, to figure out what the trajectory of that ongoing spending will be, what has happened directly before, so it's not appropriate to isolate that into a moment of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is what was in your cap rate report, correct?
That was the reality of some of those properties at the time, but that's not capitalizing what an owner would need to spend in perpetuity, presumably.
Okay, so if the potential purchaser was thinking that this is just a moment of time and it's too low, and repair and maintenance per unit was increased, what effect would that have on the cap rates in
So
your report?
which property are you referring to?
Okay, so $332 per unit on 210 St. Mary's, just as an example. So you guys calculated it at 6 1/4 cap. The purchaser said 5.5. Might it be that the purchaser looked at that 332 and said, we're likely to more spend like $1,200 per unit, and as such, based on that static stale price?
Yeah, I'm not sure how they were looking to position that going forward, but I also don't necessarily see how that property relates materially to this property. I think this property is very specific, and we're here to do a site-specific analysis. I'm simply suggesting that a 5% cap on a building with this kind of history, and also, I mean, quite frankly, the way that the market would look at this is, you wouldn't say, well, we're gonna put a separate cap on the parking structure. You're not buying all those income streams independent of one another. The maintenance on the parking alone would be astronomical going forward. So 5.5 cap is low, but appropriate for the purpose of this exercise.
Okay. But the blended cap, taking it all in, like you said, taking it all into consideration.
Right.
Is we have 5.3 as a total,
On,
for the project as a total?
right.
Okay,
Which is
so-
low, right? It should be 5 point.
Okay,
Because
then-
you also, you mentioned earlier that you didn't know about the past life of this building, you didn't know it's been reconverted.
Right, we're looking at it right now.
You said that should be adjusted upwards, so 5.5 is bang on.
You guys have heard the cap story before, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Appleton?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
So you're requesting a 5.5% cap rate overall?
No, we're just dealing with the Res 2 income stream, so we're just dealing with the apartment income stream.
Okay,
We're
and
accepting the office, the restaurant, the parking,
those income streams as they are.
we're accepting those as they are, those seem to be small.
You would like it to be 5.5 for the apartment?
That's correct.
Thank you, that's all my questions. That will complete 160 Smith Street. And we will move on to 134 Smith Street, item number 7 on the docket today.
All right, let's take a look at this. Okay, 134 Smith Street, file number 19-3732. Roll number 12093276100. Another Raz M, just down the street, 17,048,000. On the assessment, we've got a small amount of commercial in there, which is not being disputed, so I'm not gonna touch on it really.
Okay,
Res M, 3 buildings, 23 stories, 1979, no effective age, on 177 suites, 133 indoor parking, 22 outdoor parking, construction class C masonry granite walls. Page 2, they've been sending their information in. Page 3 shows our model breakdown on it. So we've got our combined NOI of 858, 788, with our blended cap, 5.04, you got 17,048,000 rounded. 109 one bedrooms, 68 two bedrooms. Again, a higher ratio of 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms. We've got our subject market income on page 4 here. Just showing the rent that's been applied to both premises. We've got our comparables on page 5. In the area, these properties range from 1972, rather 1938, 1986, so it's quite the large range. Our subject property, the rent assigned by the model, is near the bottom of this range. Our property does not have any bachelor units, the comparables do, that would affect their rent on that regard. We're still at the bottom end of the range. Comparable leases are on page 6, we agree, so I won't touch on it. Again, 7 and 8, or rather 7 and 7A is our cap rate. 9, 10, and 11 is our non-recoverable expense preamble. So page 13, we've got the actuals. So when I was analyzing this property, found a couple abnormalities in regards to how the income was being reported. So, first and foremost, if you go to page 14, you'll see that under vacancy and bad debt, it says they incurred exactly $100,000 worth of bad debt. For 2017, if you flip to page 16, it says they incurred exactly $100,000 worth of bad debt. Likewise for 2015, on page 18. Also, for all 3 years, the laundry is exactly the same. I find, like I've looked at a lot of income and expense statements, and to have those perfectly round numbers every year just simply isn't the reality of the situation. To incur exactly $100,000 year after year on a bad debt side in terms of tenancy, the odds on that are just, I really won't consider them. So, though, that doesn't seem correct to me. Either that's something that was incurred in the past and was reported running forward, but that's fishy for sure. And the laundry as well. So I wasn't able to, considering that there was, $100,000 worth of reduced income, I wasn't really able to ascertain the NOI correctly, because there would be some bad debt in this place. It shouldn't be zero, but it wouldn't be the same perfectly round number year after year. So I just went with the model on this one for that reason. Another thing I noticed, if you go down to page 24, you'll see that there's a permit for fire repairs to the penthouse. This permit's for $200,000. And water damage repair to units, several units, interior works, new stud walls, drywall, electrical, exterior work, minor repairs, siding, replacement of windows in one unit. So there's $200,000 worth of repairs that would be outside of the normal year-to-year maintenance. That's, the permit was issued in 2015. When you go to page 18, which is the back of the 2015 income and expense statement capital cost summary section, there's nothing there in regards to the work they put in. These are expenses that would be outside of what an investor would typically expect. Like, there was a fire there, they're not expecting a fire every year. Same with 2016, not reported. So when you look at the repair and maintenance from 2015 and 2016, they're significantly higher than 2017. So given that I can't be certain that those repairs weren't included, as sure looks like they were. Even if you take that $200,000 and you cut it in half, $1,000 each year, brings us closer to 2017 repair and maintenance. I wasn't able to really do a site-specific income and expense breakdown of this property, so I used model. That's my evidence.
Okay, thank you.
One question. Yes, thank you. Have you visited this property?
Nope.
Okay, have you, so you haven't visited it, have you looked at a photo of it, have you Googled it, read anything about it?
I know No, they also have an active permit for, they're redoing balconies and waterproofing membranes as well, like
Okay,
right
that's
now.
gonna get to one of my questions. Now, this building has an indoor parking area, it's generally uncovered, it's unheated. It also has a gymnasium, it has a racquetball court, and it has a swimming pool. You aware of that?
I haven't inspected it, no.
Okay, it's online, you can just look it up. But would you say that those elements would lead to a higher degree of repair and maintenance than if they didn't have those amenities, particularly a pool? Pool's very, very expensive to an owner, is it not?
Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Okay. So, again, because we're gonna be talking about cap rates, so, and that being said, do you notice that these markets are not, with all those amenities, they're not achieving rents that are above market, correct?
No, looking at the comps, you're correct.
So you expect to have a lot of amenities in order to drive a higher rent, but in this scenario, that's not happening, correct?
Well, we don't have any effective age applied to this property in regards to the interior of the suites being like 160 Smith or anything like that, so we're
I've got
not.
photos in my brief, we'll get to those,
Yeah.
they're not. But that's part of the challenge of this building, it's an older building, it's got high expenses and has a lot of amenities that are not generating a higher rent. Now, you mentioned the $100,000 in bad debt,
Mhm.
that struck us as odd too, we didn't include that in our workup, so that's, no, we recognized it, but we went with your 3% because that was an anomaly.
Okay,
It makes sense, yeah, we saw that too, and thought that's odd, but I will say the laundry, you're aware that there's no en-suite laundry in any of these units, correct? If you visited, you'd see there's a food store on the main floor, it was there on Sunday, and then next to the food store, there's a laundromat, but the laundromat is operated by the owner, so my best guess is that that's a rental rate.
Okay,
Yeah, so that makes sense, that that's the same number year over year, but I agree the bad debt is odd. Okay, 79 to 79, so no work on the frame, foundation, envelope, or interior, correct?
yeah, that's correct.
Okay, we've got 22 outdoor parking stalls. Now, this is right next to the Best Western Charter, or backs onto the Best Western Charter House, correct?
Well, I haven't inspected, I'll take your word for it.
Okay, and I think that these spots that you're referencing are actually in an in-park lot. Does that make sense? It just seems odd, because I couldn't seem to, when I was there, I didn't see these, the 22 spaces that were just for the apartments. So I think that there might be an arrangement with in-park, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That's what it looks like to me. Okay, now, another interesting point here, we have all these suites, but we have 0 basement area. So would that lead you to believe that all of the storage that would have to be off-site or in the suites?
Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay. All right, so now this building's never been sold. So we've got a 40-year-old building with no permanent work. Again, the suite mix, now you've mentioned that you think that the socioeconomics of the downtown would make this a good suite mix?
It's in line with what we've seen in terms of more heavier on the one-bedroom side.
And now, just in terms of the vacancy rate, now this is I should ask, page 3, these are all modeled inputs, is that correct?
Yes.
Nothing has been adjusted?
I haven't adjusted anything.
Okay, so the expense rate, even given we've got old concrete balconies from the 1970s, we've got an old concrete parkade from the 1970s, we've got a racquetball court, we've got a pool. Should the model not be either adjusting the expense ratio or the cap rate to account for those factors? It should be captured somewhere, correct?
Yeah, your comment about the increased expenses associated with those extra amenities is fair, for
Right.
sure.
Because it's not,
I
if it
would-
was generating higher rent, then it'd be fine.
Yeah, I would say probably in the expense ratio, if anything.
Right, but okay, that's fair, but then now if we're talking about how a purchaser might approach this, do you not think that they would see a 5% cap rate as extremely low? Based on all we saw a 5% cap rate on the building right down the street just now, and that's renovated, that's objectively nicer, it's not without its issues, but this is an older building, original to its vintage, and it's got all these, The elevators are old, I mean, that's something you'd look at. Having a pool would be a detriment. And you're not achieving higher rents, plus all the repairs and maintenance that would have to go in an ongoing basis into that parkade. Would you not see an investor adjusting their cap rate based on those site-specific issues?
They might look at it and see as this is an opportunity to renovate and get some of those higher rents that its neighbors are getting.
Okay, well, it's just you have to spend a great deal of money to achieve that. Now, just interesting note, you have the market value per suite here of 94,412. In your mind, is that high or low?
That's just fine.
You don't think that's extremely high for this building?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, the rent, we're not necessarily fighting, but I did have a note here. You've got 160 and 170 Hargrave as your comps 1 and 2. Those buildings comprise holiday towers, right?
I'll take your word for it.
Okay, but the reason why that's pertinent to me is because the average monthly rent in one is $926 and $855 in the other. So is it possible that the city's model is suggesting that the rents in one tower in Holiday Tower are different than rents in the other tower?
Well, what we got is we got different ratios of bachelors, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom.
Okay.
There's more 2 bedrooms in 160.
But it's the same economic unit, right? Holiday Towers is one economic unit. Okay, cap rates, same argument. These rates are quite low. Now, they're also, they don't have much bearing on a downtown high-rise, so suffice it to say, I understand where the assessment department is, why they're imputing a cap rate of 5%, but 6% is more reasonable. Those are my questions, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Upton, any questions?
I think I'm looking at the cap rate of 5% on a building that's 1979. Was that a bit aggressive? I know age is only one factor.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on age, area, and size.
Right.
This one is in 1979, so 5 cap, over 15,000 square feet. It goes 75 and later, so it is at the bottom end of this cap rate group, and the group is quite large. But it is assigned by the model, by those parameters, so that was the cap rate that was generated on this assessment.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Oh, one other question. On the repairs and maintenance, I calculated $19.59 per suite. I'm sorry, I'll get to that later. That's within the appellant's evidence.
Ms. Billinghurst, any questions? No questions? I have no questions either. So we'll go on to your
Thank you very much.
presentation, Mr. Story.
Okay, this is 134 Smith. You might know it as the one that sort of looks like a milk carton. Built in 1979. It's 23 stories. We have 109 one-bedrooms, 68 two-bedrooms, for a total of 177 suites. Now, there's a food store on the main floor, as well as a laundromat. The city's imputing a value of $334,000, which is not in dispute. What is, however, in dispute is the residential portion, where the city is suggesting a rate of $16,711,000. We are suggesting that $12,091,000 is appropriate. This is mostly in the cap rate. Now again, there's no ensuite laundry. The first 3 floors are a semi-enclosed parkade. That's original to the building. And if just to preemptively address any issues about high R&M, we have to remember that this building has a parkade, a pool, a racquetball court, old elevators. It's an older asset in downtown Winnipeg. So that's why we're suggesting a 5% cap rate is overly aggressive. So, excuse me, we are using instead a cap rate of 6%. You know what, I actually gave the wrong number here, sorry. Did I say? Right, we are looking for $11,757,000, and that's based on the 6% cap. Now, the we in the assessor actually start off at a very similar starting point. We're slightly above the assessor's PGI. We see some of this, as the assessors correctly pointed out, we see some of these submissions and they don't, I'm sure there's some good reason for why they are how they are, but I think that a purchaser would look at this and say, well, that's maybe not necessarily reliable. We can go with the city's, what we call a downtown average of 3% vacancy. That's fair enough. So that keeps us in line on the EGI. We actually, or sorry, that's on the effective gross rent. On the effective gross income, we recognize that we are picking up a fair bit of income from the laundry and from the parking. Now, I will suggest that parking, that's not pure profit, that comes at a very high cost. As we all know, salt, moisture, and heat are the worst things for concrete, and that goes for balconies as well. So there's a huge amount of repairs that go into generating that income, subtending that income stream. So that would explain why we have income and expense, or we have expense ratios at the rate we do. So our EGI is 1,895,000. The assessor's at 1,775,000. But we've added our actual expenses. Now, this is where a disconnect occurs. The city's using a modeled expense ratio of 53%. And we're saying, well, hold on, that's not appropriate given all these assets that we have to subtend. Again, the parkade, the pool, all the racquetball court. So we end up with an NOI of 705,402, whereas the city is imputing 835,551. When we capitalize our value, our net operating income, with a 6% cap, we come to an indicated market value of $11,757,000. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and I have some photos of the suites here, so you can see that they're not in. We have a typical one bedroom. See bathtub.
What page is that?
That is 10.
Next.
Page 10.
Maybe we should just have a quick look.
Have a quick peek, please. You can see that they're not to the standard of some of the other assets that we've been looking at today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
See, Mr. Barakis, any questions?
Yeah, okay, so for, just looking at the repair and maintenance,
Yeah.
2017, 287, 916, 177, that gets you 1626 per unit. Taking, let's take 384, 708 divided by 177. That's 2173 per unit.
Yeah.
Given that evidence has been presented that there was $200,000 worth of fire repair issued in August
There's a-
of 2015, would that, and it has not been indicated separately on the income and expense mailer, would that capital repair not be expected to be included in the 2015 and 2016 repair and maintenance
That's a CapEx
amount?
That's capital expenditures, and not, would you not consider it CapEx?
Yes, but they did not note that on
Okay.
their income and expense mailer.
But you're not suggesting that repairing fire damage is adding value to this asset, are you?
No, but what I'm saying is, that kind of work is not something that's expected on a year-over-year basis, so I'm saying that 15 and
There's a grease
16.
fire in the penthouse, it was on the news,
Yeah.
everyone was evacuated, and the worst thing you can have is water damage or fire damage at the top floor, because it tends to affect everything below it.
So what I'm saying is 15 and 16 are likely inflated by the fact that there was a fire and that they had to do repairs.
I think what happens sometimes is there's a misnomer that when we see the repair and maintenance budget, we say, well, we break it down per suite. When we're fixing the parkade, that doesn't have any material effect on the quality of the suite or the interior, does it?
Not the parkade,
Right.
no.
Okay. And when we're doing maintenance on the pool, that doesn't have any material effect on the suites, does it?
Are they reporting that?
Well, this is their repairs and maintenance. They have a huge amount of amenities, as we've established. It's not generating more rent. I would suggest that's an appropriate expense ratio. 62% is actually not beyond the pale of what the city will generally apply to assets that have high carrying costs. I would suggest that it's, as an investor, I would look at this and say, well, I'm gonna have to spend a great deal of money to subtend effectively what I'll call a below market rent when we factor in vacancy and discount. And so we'd add that to the cap rate. That makes sense.
But I'm talking about like the fire repairs. That's not like a ongoing thing?
Okay, if we wanna get into the fire repairs, when we have a permit issued, that's a declared construction value, not put forth by a real estate professional or anything like that. That's by somebody who's gonna fix the drywall and the studs and whatnot, correct? That doesn't equate to a real world value. That's an estimate. So I don't know what the actual cost was, but it's likely not to have exceeded $200,000.
Do you have any statements?
No, but it's a grease fire in the penthouse. They fixed they're not reporting that here and saying that that's a typical expense that will carry forward for the life of the asset. That's not what's happening here. Because when we see the repair and maintenance, we don't see a massive inflation year over year. And the rate that we're using is $346,000, which is an average of the last 3 most typical years. That makes sense. That's how the market approaches these assets.
I just don't think including fire repairs is typical, but we can agree to disagree.
I don't think we're including fire repairs here. You
Well-
included the permit in your brief, but we
Yes.
don't, yeah, but we don't have any breakdown.
So if you take 200,000
Right,
and you divide that by 2, that gets you 100,000. So you take 2017 and you add 100,000. Say the repairs took, some time to do. Does
Are
it
you
not look?
speculating how this was reported?
I'm just saying that it looks like they didn't earmark the fire repairs in any other manner, and it looks like,
There's a lot of repairs and maintenance in this building, and I think that's adequate. I don't think that it's some sort of breakdown of fire repairs from one incident.
all right, I think the board gets it. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Panel have any questions, Barbara?
Yes, you keep referring to 334,000 being the agreed upon number, but in your brief, it's 337. So are you still agreeing to it, or?
For the other component?
Yes.
Oh, I have 334. Matthew, you have 337? Yeah, that's, we're okay with that. We can-
Okay.
We can live with that said.
I just want to make sure that,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
I'll just redirect a question to the assessor. I get the stabilized C&M 346,917. That's for stabilized
That's what they have averaged.
average.
Yeah.
Now that works out, as I calculate it, to $1,959 a suite.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the previous buildings we talked about, you were using 2,000 a suite as a sort of an average, not an average, but a.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
you were using 2,000 a suite.
Those
Now,
buildings-
this is about 2,000 a suite, but it also includes the pool, the other facilities,
Arcade, which is the big
parkade, et cetera. So isn't their number reasonable?
Okay, so for those properties, that was for Princess, and that was for 265 Portage, and those properties were 1900 something.
But upgraded.
But upgraded, right. But again, acknowledging that the bones, the property and foundation are from over 100 years ago. This is a 1979, so the
How much maintenance do you do in the foundation? You don't.
well, I'm just saying, that was just a scenario I was running to see what sort of repair and maintenance would bring, stabilized, that would calculate a number similar to our assessment, and I was mainly basing that off the age of the property.
Okay, although the upgraded age was much
Yeah, it was.
better than this.
It's greater
Yeah.
than, yeah, the interior is better, that is a fact. It's just when I see a fire permit for 200,000 that's not accounted for during the period in which the repair and maintenance is much higher. If, to be honest, the 2017 number here, the 287, which is about 1626, based on the additional amenities, you know what, that makes sense to me.
1626 would be extremely low, we've got a
Okay,
whole
sorry,
park
Mr.
in the-
Story,
I know, I just
answering
wanted,
the
don't want to put a
question.
fine point on it, but that's important to.
Well, I mean, just check out the R&M and their cap rate study, and
Okay.
see what's.
Okay, well, I just redirected the question to the assessor. I don't think I have any for the appellant.
Okay, I have one. Did you
Sure.
inspect the property?
We don't tend to go inside apartment buildings, but I was in the food store on Sunday and I did a walk around and I got a general sense of the condition of the building, to be certain.
The pictures that are in your brief,
Yeah.
you did not take those
Those are
pictures?
current listings. Those are listings for sublets or what have you, so those are current. That would show the current condition of the interior, yes.
You're sure they're from this building?
I'm positive, because I contacted the person and I said, is this a current listing? And they emailed me back and said, yes, I'm looking at this. So that's 100% current condition photo.
Okay, thank you. That will conclude 134 Smith Street.
I run to the washroom, but.
Yes, go right ahead. We'll take a very short break. We'll call the meeting back to order. And we've been trying to do that all day. And we will begin with item number 8, 120 Donald Street.
Okay. File number 19-2098, roll number 12093370200, 120 Donald Street. That's Resam, 21,432,000 on the assessment. There was a small amount of school exempt commercial space in there. 2 buildings, 17 stories, built in 1986. Property is located on Donald between Broadway and York. 1986, 160 suites, 62 indoor parking, 146 outdoor parking, construction class C, masonry, bearing walls. Page 2 shows the request for income information. They've been sending them mail just fine. Out of the 160 units, there's 34 bachelor, 116 one-bedroom, and 10 two-bedroom for the 160 total units. Just glancing ahead, so we've got multiple income streams on this property. So unless things have changed, the apartment and the parking structure are not being disputed, so I won't dwell too much on them. Page 4 shows the subject properties market income, so we've got $958 on the rent, and then our rental rates, zeroing in on the office and retail. The range, we've got $10 to $14 on them. The restaurant, we've got $16 on it. On page 30, sorry, at the very end of my brief, and this is from 2017, we've got 28A. They're looking to lease some space out. And they got the net rent $13 for a unit of 7,355 units. So we're right in the ballpark of what they themselves are saying that they're trying to get.
What page were you referring to?
Sorry, right at the end, 28A. And then if you flip it over, pardon me, 29,
I see, thank you.
13. And then they've got the additional amount there, which is inclusive of the 5% management, as an additional $9.8 per square foot. So 13 net, we're right around that for what the model has assigned this property for the office space. Our residential rent comparables are on page 5. Again, 190 Smith used to be crossed out. The real rent is more in the 900s range, I believe. Again, heavy on the bachelor units on that one. Because the residential side of the coin isn't being contested, I'm not gonna sit on that for very long. On page 6, just shows some of the rental rates for office and retail in the neighborhood, and these numbers support both what the model is kicking out and what they are trying to rent out themselves for on page 29. So our numbers are good in that regard. Parking is not under dispute, so I'm not gonna talk about that. Page 14 onward shows an income and expense mailer. It's all blended together, so I can't pull stuff out. I don't know what is assigned to what in this regard. So I just went with model. It looks like we're good on the income side of the coin. I didn't make a change to this one for that reason. Someone check if I included any permits. There's some pictures to page 34 onward of the interior of the building, just showing some of the suites that are for rent. Looks like they've fixed them up. That's my evidence, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Story, if you have questions?
I do. I'll try and be brief, but I have a lot of questions, so I apologize in advance. So we're contesting the office, the retail, and the restaurant here, just so we're all clear. Now, building was built in 1986, and no substantial work that altered the effective age of the building, correct?
We don't have it on record, but it looks like they are doing some work on the pictures.
Okay.
That was at the end of my brief. Those are nice kitchens and bathrooms.
Okay, now you may have mentioned that in the last property we looked at, that the value per suite was reasonable, but this is only slightly higher, and I would suggest that these are much nicer. Would you agree?
I would suggest that perhaps based on the pictures that an inspection would be necessary. These-
Okay.
On page 35, that's not
Okay. That's what that
1986.
is. Okay. So, the restaurant value from last cycle to this, let me ask you this. Has there been any material change in terms of the tenancy in this building from last cycle to this cycle?
I'm not sure.
Okay, if there hasn't, and I'm suggesting there hasn't been, would it be safe to say that the economic reality of this asset has not changed from last cycle to this cycle? If everything stayed the same leases, same tenants, same.
The economic reality, yeah, if they're paying the same,
Same vacancy, same
it
everything, okay.
wouldn't
Now,
change
okay,
too much.
then what I'll ask you then is, now the restaurant is Don Deli, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Are you aware of that?
I've been there.
Yeah, it's been there for about 30 years, right? Okay. So, are you aware that this valuation this cycle equates to a 15% increase in value year over year, though nothing has changed?
No, I do not know that.
Okay, and on the retail side, we've got a food store, a tailor, and then some vacant space, I believe. And that, this valuation would equate to an increase of 22%.
I mean, it doesn't mean that we were right last time, we could be low.
Okay, now, fair enough. So if you're low last time you were at $339,000 for the office. This time we were at $912,000, that's an increase of 169%. Are you aware of that?
For the office section?
For the office section. Last cycle you were at $339,000, this cycle you're combined at $912,000. It takes us from $65 a square foot to $174.
That was the assessment, right? I'm curious to know what kind of rents we assigned them, if it was in and around that $13 net that they're
That's
advertising.
well, the rents they're achieving is through the Alzheimer's Society, which is, you mentioned
Yeah.
there's an exemption, and they're at $950 a square foot. And everything else is big. Now, you mentioned that there's a listing for $13 a square
Yeah.
foot. Now, are you using that, are you factoring that into your valuation?
Well, it's something when I was reviewing the numbers, I definitely put weight on.
But they haven't actually leased the space at $13 a square foot, correct?
But they're saying that it's worth $13 a
Well,
square.
they might be optimistic, they're trying to get to, as a starting point, right? And is this post-reference, this material?
No,
Are you sure?
100%. It was scanned into our system in 2017. I looked all over the sheets. If there was a date, I would have circled it.
Okay.
But I can,
There's never a date on these things, right?
under oath, I can say 2017 for sure. That's when it was entered into our system.
That's fine. So they were looking for $13 a square foot, couldn't get it to the state, so that's fine. Now, partially, I'm kind of happy that you put this in here, because one of the things that we're gonna be talking about today is shortfall. Now, you've got the Camden tax at the broker is listing it at $9.80 a square foot, right?
That's what's on the report, yes.
Right. And that's a recoverable expense, correct? So that's what the owner recovers from the tenant, and that's the admin costs, that's the property taxes, and that's the common area maintenance. Okay, so you're using, where are we here? You're using, let me see, you're at the shortfall. Okay. So your rate is much lower than ours. You're from somewhere between $650 to $850, and the model is saying that the shortfall rate should be different based on the current use of the commercial rental unit. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is what it looks like.
Okay, would it not be more appropriate to recognize that the shortfall rate is actually the same for the entire building and then apply the actual rate?
The shortfall,
The shortfall rate is the cost to the owner of unrecovered expenses upon vacancy, correct?
yes, yeah.
Okay, and it's usually, we call it the shortfall rate, it's usually a little bit lower than the actual common tax rate, than the recoverable expenses, correct?
You know, I'm not as familiar with the retail side, just out of full disclosure.
Okay, well, I'll suggest that that's true, and that's why we're using $915 as opposed to $650 to $850. Okay, now your cap rates on the office, on the retail, and the restaurant, there's a fairly large swing there from 6% to 7.9%. If this office space has been chronically vacant, we've had a huge amount of trouble renting it for years and years, do you not think that that cap rate ought to be higher? Because this is substandard downtown office space.
You're talking about like the
Oh, the
10.5% on?
I got your cap rate at 6.05 here.
Oh, are you talking about the vacancy rate or the cap rate?
The cap rate.
Oh, the cap rate. It's just assigned by the model.
It's assigned by the model, okay. And on the retail, well, that's 7.9, okay, fair enough. Now, 6.5 on the restaurant, that's modeled as well?
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't look into that, or you didn't give that a second look, I just accepted that from the model, okay. Now, if I go to your comps, looking into these now, for the restaurants, now, number one is $387,000, that's Sauna Soup House, that's next to the Second Cup, that's right across from the Manitoba Hydro Tower. Would you say that that's superior, inferior?
Superior.
It's superior, okay. And 155 Smith, that's La Roca, that's a dinner spot that turns into a nightclub at night. 2 patios, fully renovated, the old Geo space, was that Superior? That's Superior, okay. 260 St. Mary's, that's Carbone, that's a chain, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, and chains get a different application from a model than non-chain.
Is it a chain?
Well, it's a local chain, they have four outlets now, they'll have 8 by next year. So it's suffice to say, it's not like Don Deli, which is a mom and pop operation.
Yeah, it's different for sure.
Okay, and it gets a different, it's treated differently by the model is my point, correct?
Yeah, they should.
Evaluation
They
manual.
should be separated out. I mean, we do have chain
Okay.
separated differently, like I think that applies more like a Subway or a Tim Hortons.
Well, that's
types in
that's a
there,
national chain, there was different gradations there, but fair enough, let's just
Yeah.
assume that that's a different product. And then the last one is Oscar's Delicatessen, which we all know. Now they've been in business for 90 years, they've been at that spot certainly from before 2015. So is that a renewal?
I don't know, that's 18, we're at 16, so we're below that one.
Right, but it's probably not appropriate. So I want to show that the model is not capturing the reality, but.
Are you
okay.
saying that's not market value?
I'm saying that if that's Oscar's lease in 2015, it's above market. Renewals tend to sign higher than new leases, clearly, right? It's in Oscar's Deli's best interest to pay slightly higher rent because their clientele is.
Maybe they're paying less because they're a long-term tenant.
That's not how the market works. Okay, let's go to the office retail. Now, we have no corner store leases here, do we?
I'm not sure.
Okay. The first lease is 175 Hargrave. Again, that's the same building that Oscar's is in, and that's the Treaty Commission. And that's connected to the skywalk, and that covenant on that lease is the federal government. Is that correct?
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. The next one is 101 400 St. Mary. That's a dental clinic next to the convention center. Would you say that's superior, inferior, or equivalent?
I don't really see a difference.
A dental clinic? You told me they've got a higher lease rate than a food store or a tailor?
If we're just looking at the space itself,
Well, a dental clinic, usually they'll have some sort of inducement in terms of putting their specialized equipment in. That's why a dental clinic is generally not comparable to a.
okay, so those ones are at 17.
Right.
185 Carlton
Yeah,
is at
no,
17,
okay.
and Hargrave's at 14, and we're using 13, which
Right.
matches.
I'm just
what
wondering
they're
why
at.
these are being drawn to the conversation if they're so disparate. Okay, now the last one, just not to belabor this, but that's on Carlton. I don't know what unit that is. I tried to inspect it. I know that there's a Subway there, there's a Thomas Hines Tobacconist.
I was on Google Street View trying to figure out
Yeah,
which
what-
one that
what
was
is it,
too.
right?
and
Yeah.
All I know is it's vacant now, and I don't know what the heck it was before. So
Okay,
we
that's
went
fine.
through the same thing.
But it's on the Skywalk system, which is important. That commands a.
That building is, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Those are my questions on your comps. Okay. Again, on the retail comps, we've got nothing downtown, but would you suggest that, these are also, not only are they not downtown, they're all suburban strip centers in terms of your retail caps. So would you suggest that that these caps are probably not appropriate in terms of assessing the retail universe in downtown Winnipeg?
Yeah, they're not downtown Winnipeg.
They're not downtown, and that's, suburban strip malls are treated differently than downtown corner stores, for example. Correct?
Yeah, these aren't in the neighborhood.
They're in the neighborhood?
No, they're not in the neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
They're not in the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
yeah. Okay, I think that, yeah, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. Panel?
No, I don't have any, thank you.
I don't think I have any either. So, would you like to take us through your material?
All right, so again, we are, this is Broadview Manor. We have 5 income streams here, but we're only disputing 3. So we're talking about today the office portion, the restaurant portion, and the retail portion. Now, it's important to point out that in the grand sum of things here. The city is suggesting that all of the income streams together should equate to a indicated market value of 21,432,000. And we are suggesting that once we properly adjust the office, restaurant, and retail, we come to a value of 20,656,000. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so I'll show you where we differ. We're using rents in place, which I think is important because it is a challenging space, so the rents that are in place are certainly most indicative of the market. And I would suggest that if we didn't have the Alzheimer's Society paying an exempt sub-market rent, the space would likely be vacant. So it's a good indication of how we ought to value this space. So for the retail side, again, we have a tailor and we have a food store. We're actually higher on the potential net market income based on the rents that are in place, but that is also because, as I mentioned earlier, these are longer term tenants. There's renewals involved, they tend to pay a higher rent. It would not be in their best interest likely to relocate, and that's generally how the market works in terms of retail and restaurants as well, I would suggest. So we are using a vacancy rate of 10%. We believe that's reasonable. Again, we're talking about downtown Winnipeg. This is not suburban retail. And I will say, I think you've all heard the submissions on non-recoverables. I will just briefly, I would like to speak to it because I haven't been able to speak to all of you about it, but effectively what we're suggesting is that there is a 5% downward adjustment in the erosion of the income that the market practitioners are using, that investors are using, where nothing has changed in the market. The only thing that has changed this cycle is that the city has dropped the management fee. In prior years, they had dropped the definition, but effectively, this is a non-recoverable fee to the owner involved with the prudent management of an asset. Most of it has to do with space listing, advertising, and leasing commissions. So for the purpose of brevity here, I will suggest that we're going to continue to apply a 5% management fee as well as a 2% structural fee as is. That's based on market behavior, and we will continue to reflect that in our evaluation. The shortfall rate that we've used is the real shortfall rate. So if we're using real rents and they're higher, then it's only appropriate that we use the real shortfall rate. That's $9.15, and that's supported by the rent roll. You can see that at the reference date, it's $9.15. And yes, and then our cap rates, we're suggesting that the office ought to have a lower cap rate than the retail and the restaurants. Traditionally, restaurants and retail spaces, particularly in downtown Winnipeg, would be higher than the office, though they're not worlds apart. We are suggesting that the retail space and the restaurant space be applied a rate of 7.9% on the cap, and that the office space being, we'll call it, I wouldn't call it Class B office space, it's maybe C or miscellaneous. 7.5 is reasonable if not low. So that gives us an indicated market value on the retail stream of $2,097,544. On the office stream, $476,998. And on the restaurant stream, $449,659, which would bring us to an indicated market value on the total asset, again, not disputing the parking or the apartment, of $20,656,000. Thank you.
And I thank you. Let's see if there's questions. Mr. Barakis, any questions?
So, I'm not gonna go through it, you've heard it before, I'm just gonna hand this out because of the non-recoverable expense study rebuttal. I can touch upon it.
I don't think you have to touch upon it really. We've heard it, and we've heard it from both sides, all three of us, I believe, so.
Okay.
But,
Just, I have to submit it.
very good.
So, that's
Thank you.
just a rebuttal to the Altus non-recoverable.
Very good.
submitted, but you've indicated that you've heard it before, so I won't go into it. So, use you use the actuals for office income received. Does that include the sub-market rent for the exempt?
It does, that's the market. If we weren't receiving that, it would be vacant space. That's the market. The market is telling us that that's, and you can see we've had that space, the additional office space listed for a number of years. And it's challenging. We're seeing more and more office space come on stream. This location is not particularly desirable, and I think if you're on the walkway, maybe $13 a square foot would be more appropriate, but we see tons of vacant space just like this throughout downtown Winnipeg, so it should surprise no one. So in order to capture the shortfall, or to try and capture the shortfall and get an exemption, it makes sense that the owner would take in a not-for-profit, and it seems to work out, but it's a challenging space to rent, to be certain.
Have they been renovating the individual residential suites?
We're not fighting residential, right?
I'm just, because we're looking at current condition.
I'm not sure, I didn't dive into the residential, we're not appealing it. The residential seemed appropriate, so what didn't seem appropriate were the large increases across the office, retail, and restaurant component, especially given the economic reality hasn't changed since the little past.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Marla?
No questions.
Mr. Upton?
Yeah, you're accepting a 5% cap rate on the apartments, right?
Well, the apartments have been renovated, they're up to modern standards, so, yeah, we're not necessarily accepting the 5% cap rate, but we are accepting the quantum, we'll say that. We're accepting the final value,
Quantum.
how they get there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and are there any pictures of the office space in your
Yep.
brief?
Yeah, there are.
Where would I?
Got here's the food store.
Yeah, restaurant.
Restaurant, Don Deli. And I've got the photo of the tailor, this space, it's largely sort of unfinished. It's been there for a number of years, I believe it was on month to month for some time.
The Taylor, but is that what you're calling the office space?
No, the office space is in the All Summers office, I was not there. so.
Okay. Did you inspect the property?
Exterior, and I've been inside the food store, and obviously I've been inside Don Deli about a number of times. It's a
Okay,
great place.
thank you.
Okay.
That concludes 120 Donald Street. That concludes the docket for today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone. And in summation, may I just say that may I have a summation?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
I just wanted to point out that I feel that
Yes.
there's some specific issues about the apartment blocks we looked at today, and I think that the city has been, I say this every time, they've been aggressively low in the cap rates this cycle, and I appreciate that you are here to our position, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. Matthew, would you like to say anything? No. Okay. I'm sorry for forgetting the summation. Okay, that concludes our hearing. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Wonderful.